You're listening to the Electronic Media Collective Podcast Network. For more great shows like the one you're about to enjoy, visit electronicmediacollective.com. And now, our feature presentation.
Welcome to the exciting world of the movies.
Hello and welcome back to the Movie Graveyard. You know, we always look back in time here, movies from the past, and 2021's getting long in the tooth, ain't it, Trev?
Oh, it feels. I mean, remember at the beginning of this year, we thought this was going to be the good year.
Yeah.
In 2020.
Yeah. Everybody was like, 2020's over. But yeah. It's like, oh, we'll get ready for the second part of 2020, 2021.
2020 part 2.
Yeah. But, you know, as always, we're always happy to bring you the best podcast out there that talks about old movies. And you know why this is the best podcast that talks about old movies, Trev?
Because we're the only one willing to talk about this movie?
Well, exactly. But more directly, I was going to say, because we got you. And you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and you bring a lot in terms of... I'll go ahead and I'll call you, in a way, I'll call you the architect of this show, just because you don't plan out every episode that we do, but the special episodes you do. And, this one, we're just doing a kind of a normal standard show here. But, again, another great solid pick from Trevor Pumpkin Cider.
Well, that goes both ways, because you are always receptive to those ideas, and every kind of idea I've thrown at you, you've been very willing to indulge in with like the special episodes. And yeah, this is one I brought up to you because it just seemed like this is a movie that needs to be talked about. I'm very, very excited for this one. You and I have done some real humdingers, but I would say this might be the weirdest movie we've ever done.
Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think about it. Now I'm thinking about it. Yeah, it might be. I mean, we've definitely done some ones that were like outlandish in terms of the horror genre.
Yeah.
You know, like some outrageous premises, I would say. But in terms of just an overall tone and everything of a movie, this could be the weirdest one.
Yeah, this is just one of those movies where you look at, and the most fascinating thing about it is that this was made by a studio.
Right.
And I before we get into it, I just want to briefly mention, because I didn't respond to when you sent me this message, but you had mentioned that, so both you and I just, and obviously we'll talk in a moment about what the movie is, but both you and I just got the new Blu-ray of it. And I had pretty much the exact same experience as you, where this is a movie, and I'm sure it's the same for you as well, that I just saw on cable all the time as a kid. This is one of those ones that was just on constantly, and that's why I kind of got obsessed with it. And then I hadn't revisited this in, I don't know, 15 years or more. And boy, when I sat down and rewatched this the other day, like every single moment, every single line, it just like clicked back with me. I didn't realize how much I had this movie memorized. And you had said the same thing, where it's like, oh, this is the exact same movie I remember. And yeah, it just came flooding back for me.
Yeah, like I probably only seen this twice, like all the way through. Definitely snippets on cable, but once in the theater, and then on video or cable. I know I watched it again like a few years after that, but it probably at the very least probably 15 to 20 years since I watched it all the way through. Mm-hmm. And it's one of those ones that, even though it kind of has been around, once you see it, everything, like, no matter how long it's been, everything clicks in your head. Like you're never really like, oh, I don't remember this character. Oh, I don't remember this, like, set piece. Like, no, it stays hidden in your brain whether you want to or not. So we'll go ahead and get rolling on Nothing But Trouble here.
From 1991.
Exactly. A great year.
Still feels like an 80s movie, though, right? Like that's the thing.
It does.
Obviously, 91 is not too far past the 80s, but this has a lot of hallmarks of an 80s film.
But it definitely has the weirdness of 80s movies.
Yeah.
But more, with a little bit, I'd say, more of a early 90s kind of polish and sheen. But that also has to be, this is shockingly a high budget movie, but we'll get to that. But we have the Blu-ray pause on about the 3-second mark. It's just the very beginning of the movie. Starts out with the classic Warner Brothers logo, Time Warner Company.
I missed this logo.
I know. Beautiful.
That new logo.
Whoa. Oh, it's complete. Well, you know what, too, Trev, and I know we probably talk about this a lot, but if you're going to do a logo, whether you do it now, then whatever, and I think you'll agree with me, do a hand-painted logo.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. So that's all we'll say about that. But I'll say 1, 2, 3, go. And when you hear me say the word go, please hit play on your remotes. You ready, Trev?
I'm ready.
Ready. Nothing But Trouble. 1, 2, 3, go. Oh, beautiful logo. It almost looks like 3D. It's got so much depth to it. You know what I mean?
It's so nice. Yeah. I just recently watched Dune, which I was a big fan of, but having like a masterpiece kind of movie to me like that, start with that new ugly logo is just such a
brutal
kick in the nuts, you know?
Yeah, so and speaking of 80s, how you said this has some trappings of some 80s, or, you know, feel like this is definitely, I mean, it was in the 90s too, but this is classic 80s. Just start out your credits right away with aerial shots of a city.
Yeah. Now, I guess we could say right away, I want to ask you this so we don't have to bring it up later, but what do you think of the title Nothing But Trouble? Because as you probably know, this is not Dan Aykroyd's preferred title. He wanted to call this Valkenvania. So what do you think? What's your take on that?
Maybe I am just intoxicated with this movie, but I always love the title. And I know people people go, it's generic. They could have done this. And I'm just like, no, it's perfect to me. It sums up the movie. It's the character of the movie.
Yeah, when I hear Aykroyd say that he thinks Valkenvania would have been the better title, nobody knows what that word means. You know, you have to see the movie until it has any context. So I'm not sure. I mean, obviously, this movie still is not the most beloved movie. But I think if it was called Valkenvania, I'm not sure that would help very much.
I think the Valkenvania title conjures up possibly some more curiosity and makes you think this will be a fantasy film, which it definitely is in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. But in terms of like, you got a movie with such a high classic SNL pedigree, I think, you know, even though this movie flopped, and we'll probably get into that a little bit later, I think just going with a normal title, like Nothing But Trouble is like a good comedy title, like Modern Problems or The Great Outdoors, or just any of the, you know, the previous Aykroyd, Chevy Chase type movies that came out, you know?
Yeah. I was just thinking as we were watching the opening credits on school. So when I was a kid watching all these movies, you know, maybe one of the first people I kind of was always constantly clocking is like having some awareness of an, you know, below the line person. Casting director Marion Doherty. Boy, do I feel like she casted like every movie I saw when I was a kid, you know? It's one of those like names that I remember seeing in the opening credits of every film.
The one that I remember like out the wazoo, and I always like wonder if this is a Mandela effect in my mind or maybe whatever, but I want to say there was a lady named Mary Jo Slater, and maybe this is true, maybe this isn't, maybe I read this, maybe this isn't, but I always thought that she was Christian Slater's mom, but I could be wrong about that.
I think... Man, I feel like I think there might be some truth to that, because I feel like his mom is in the business, right?
Because even later, there was like I believe a younger sibling called Ryan Slater who was in something called The Great Panda Adventure or something like that.
And of course, if whatever else you can say about this movie, we just saw director of photography Dean Cundey, so this movie does look great.
Exactly. The only way you could get more Dean Cundey if it was in a 2:35:1 aspect ratio.
You know, it's interesting. The same day I watched this, later that night, just by pure coincidence, I was doing a movie night with a friend, and we picked another movie I hadn't watched in years, and that was Romancing the Stone, and that was also Dean Cundey. And I was just like, man, this is the second movie I watched today with Dean Cundey as director of photography. And they're like, oh yeah, it's because he was the director of photography on like everything back then. So.
No, not to say this in a negative way at all, Trev, because I'm really not that type of person, but where we're at in history now, isn't it weird that there was an entire decade where Kathleen Turner was always was like this smoke show lady.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
and great too, you know, like,
yeah. And I mean, nothing gets her, you know, she was I think she was one of the best actresses of the decade, but I think a lot of her kind of sexy persona was, to her credit, was actually more her acting than it was even her looks. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
And here we're introduced, this is kind of the setup of the movie right away, you know, or like a whopping, you know, not counting credits, we're like a whopping minute and a half into this, is Chevy Chase meets this kind of a wreck of a lady, but she's beautiful, obviously Demi Moore, and like, I just think this is like kind of like a great setup. Like, you got the super successful guy, Chevy Chase. He's in like financial publishing. It seems like he does like a newsletter, not really a newsletter, but I guess basically, I don't know what you call it. Like, it's a magazine, but it seems like it's put out more on a daily basis almost.
It does seem like a newsletter. It's basically like advice on what stocks to pick. Yeah. And, you know, it's a financial advice. So as he will bring up later in the movie, not a banker himself, but trying to help people make their money. And then she is a lawyer, correct? Isn't that? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And she's in distress because she's having a terrible breakup, it seems like.
So I'm going to say it now so I can get it out of the way, but I'll keep bringing it up throughout the movie. So my takeaway rewatching and revisiting this movie was It's weird because I think obviously a lot of attention to this movie is the fact that it has 3 comic superstars, right? John Candy, Chevy Chase, and Dan Aykroyd. I think Demi Moore gives maybe the best comedic performance in this movie. I was really, really impressed with her in this.
Yeah, like it's. I guess we'll kind of get into it as the movie goes along, but I thought she was great because she kind of floats in between, kind of being this manic personality that you expect to see in a kind of a classic, kind of farce of a movie, and there's also other scenes where she actually does a good job, kind of playing the straight man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess when I say best comedic performance, maybe obviously Dan Aykroyd is doing pretty great comedic stuff in this, but yeah, she's like in terms of her reaction shots, like how she has to, she very much is her and Chevy Chase are their introduction into all this oddness, and she just plays it so well, and especially this is her coming right off of Ghost. Mm-hmm. The fact that she decided to follow that mega successful movie with this is pretty interesting, but I think she comes out of this pretty squeaky clean. Whatever else you might think about the movie, she is certainly, she's beautiful, she's funny, and you said she does a really nice job with some of the straight stuff too.
Yeah, there's a commentary track from a pop culture historian. I'm blanking on the guy's name on this disc, and the guy really knows his stuff. He does a lot of great insights, and he actually brings that up, and he says they got kind of lucky in terms of Ghost was actually released during the production of this film, so not that it mattered because this film did not capitalize in any way at the box office.
But I was watching this, and it really made me think about like what we kind of lost when Hollywood kind of, and I don't know the whole story behind this, but obviously we got to a certain point where Hollywood kind of turned its back on Demi Moore a little bit. I think. I know there's some issues about her maybe being like difficult and stuff too, but that's always, they just always throw that onto actresses, right? But she's perfect in this, and even stuff to like when she had her brief little comeback in Charlie's Angels 2, I thought she was awesome in that. So it's like I'm always rooting for her to kind of come back, and it never seems like it takes off as much as I'd like to see it.
To kind of throw a little bit of a bone to the quote unquote difficult actresses out there, Trev, you ever notice that actresses, no matter how beautiful, no matter how toned, how in shape, they always somehow get a little more difficult after they turn 40. Have you ever noticed that?
Oh, yeah. It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really, really interesting. But I love her, and this is probably not a movie that you're as hot on as I am, but I'm a big fan of St. Elmo's Fire, and
that's a good movie.
Yeah, like her role in that, she kind of plays the girl who's kind of having the quarter life crisis at that point in time, and obviously is having some drug issues in the film, and ever since that point, and it's kind of funny too. I was thinking about this, Trev. She was one of the few people that was really, booking kind of major movies in her early 20s, and as far as I can tell, I don't ever remember her playing a high school student. She kind of just jumped straight to college and afterwards, like type roles. She didn't have to go through the whole high school, even Jennifer Jason Leigh had a bunch of high school roles at the time. But
the interesting bit of trivia about her too, right? That she's actually on the poster for "I Spit on Your Grave." Did you know that?
I did not know.
The classic poster of "I Spit on Your Grave." That's her. That's really? Her body, her butt right there on that poster. Yeah, she talked about it. I'm not sure if people knew it before, but it was she a couple of years ago. She published an autobiography. And that was one of the big takeaways people had in that. And she revealed that she was the model for that.
Yeah, that's funny because the historian guy was saying that with her biography, this is one of the few films she didn't touch upon. And by accounts of like other people in the cast, some things, there was some of the interviews on the disc, like she seemed like she got along really well and like was really like helpful to other people in the cast and whatever. So
from what I've read, Dan Aykroyd loved her because he said she came to set ready to like offer her like expertise and suggestions on framing shots. This was his first time directing. He didn't really want to direct this. But he said that she was very helpful in that. Although I have also read, I'm sure you as well, that she apparently, and this is not surprising, we're going to talk about this, she had a little bit of more difficult time with Chevy Chase. He apparently was not great with her.
Which is weird. Like, I didn't want to turn this show into a thing of slamming Chevy Chase because I feel like...
No, but we're going to have to talk about it.
I feel like that's been done to death on just everywhere. But what's kind of weird, too, is like some people on the cast had great experiences with Chevy, so it kind of seems like it's like a person-to-person thing. Like
it is, yeah. It's. I was just listening to this. I was listening to another podcast talking about Chevy Chase. And they're saying how there's all these stories about him being like so difficult and stuff, and then somebody else heard a story to where somebody on the crew, their sister or somebody was like a huge Chevy Chase fan, and they're like, could I, she's on the phone, could you talk to her? and he took the phone and spent like 45 minutes just talking to this random crew member's sister, and was like great with her, you know. So I think you never know with him, and I think I've never heard, to his credit, and I'm going to throw him a lot of credit in this too, because I actually think he's good in this as well. I've heard people say this seems like a detached performance from him, but I don't necessarily agree. No. But I think like any story you ever hear about him being difficult is only in relation to other creative types.
Yeah.
He's not one of those ones you hear about being like a dick with fans or anything. You know, It seems like, and that's probably even worse. I think he just has, I think he's very, maybe to his detriment sometimes, very sure of himself and not willing to collaborate in the best ways. But I don't think necessarily he's a horrible human being. Right.
I mean, I'm sure he's probably had his moments over the years. The guy's had a 45-year career. There's probably some moments where he was just cranky or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I guess we should mention too that the kind of sidekicks who tag along on this little ride. You have Ronaldo. They're like a Brazilian couple, and in my mind, I always thought they were married, but it turns out they're actually brother and sister. So. You have the character of Ronaldo, played by Bertil Adamas, and I can't remember his character name, but the great Taylor Negron.
Awesome. Another, just one of those actors you're always so happy to see pop up.
Oh, I seriously loved him as a kid, and in the movies I remember loving him. It's so weird, Trev. When I rewatched them, I didn't realize he had like one scene. Like,
you remember him from all these like tiny roles, but so great, and it's unfortunate we lost him way too early.
Yeah. And it just, I mean, just something about him. He always stood out. Like, I loved him as, of course, the pizza delivery guy in Fast Times. I loved him as the mailman in Better Off Dead.
That's my favorite, probably. Well, this is like actually one of his better roles. He's in this quite a bit, and he's got a lot of good moments in this.
Yeah. And the lady who plays Renata Bertil Adamas, she actually did a interview on the disc, and she was one of the people who Chevy Chase like really kind of took her under her wing, or under his wing, I should say. And went as far as to making sure like they gave her good lighting, they, just like all kinds of stuff. Like, and she was saying like he was actually like, he seemed pretty personable on the set. That like she said he would come in and actually do his shtick of falling down in front of everybody, like to make the crew laugh and all that. So I was actually surprised to hear that.
That's the thing I wanted to ask you. So here's my thought on this, because as I just mentioned, you'll see a lot of reviews for this film that say, "Oh, this is like a boring Chevy Chase performance, or it's not as strong as his other ones." Do you think that's simply because he's doing, and this is a testament to what this film is, this is like this is going to sound weird, but this is a fairly subdued comedic performance from him. It's not as like, this is not Clark Griswold, right? He has to actually also play kind of the straightness of the insanity of the situation they end up in. So I think, he is funny in this, but it's not quite the Chevy Chase performance you're used to seeing in a goofier movie. And I think that's why people have a hard time seeing that he's actually doing decent work in this. I think he's actually a really good like leading man in this movie.
I'm going to triple down on that, Trev, and maybe this is just because, I just watched this, for the first time in a long time in, recent days, and I've always been a Chevy Chase fan and all that, but I'll be honest, like, this is probably my favorite Chevy Chase role, because as much as I loved the vacation movies as a kid, there's a part of me that, like, I always liked Clark Griswold, but like he becomes such a fucking buffoon as the movies progress that it's almost like I don't know how to say it. It just there's not a lot of whatever like I think and I don't know how much was scripted, how much was ad-libbed or whatever, but he had me laughing in this movie like big time, and like I thought he was brilliant enough to realize that like what Aykroyd and Candy and some of the other people were doing was so big in this movie that he was kind of like to me this is almost like his Jack Burton role. Like he's just so like just a total smart ass, and he's kind of dumb too. As smart as he is, he's kind of dumb. Like he kind of like falls into all the traps of like what happens, you know what I mean? It's just like, I don't know, I thought it was like a really skillfully blended like character, and I didn't ever once get the impression at all that he was like sleepwalking or halfway going through it at all.
I've seen the Chevy Chase movies where he is sleepwalking, and this isn't one of them. I think he's totally in here, and I know what you mean about Clark Griswold. Clark Griswold is my favorite Chevy Chase character, but you're right that especially by the time you get to like Vegas Vacation, he's become a cartoon character.
Right.
There's no realism to him anymore, and this is a pretty realistic, down to earth character. Just as you said, the humor comes from how kind of sarcastic he is and how quick-witted he is in some moments. And
I think Chevy Chase, and kind of being the original one to kind of break out of SNL and go do movies and stuff, I think in this movie suits him better than even some other ones. I think Chevy Chase kind of that appeal is that, like, especially for like the old like now there's comedians, Trev, that both male and female, that look like supermodels and they're funny, you know what I mean? But back then it was very rare to find an even halfway decent looking guy, halfway charming guy that did comedy shit. And I think Chevy Chase went from SNL to that leading man role like so well, and I think he kind of pulls it off here. Like, he's half like goofball, but you know, he's dressed nice. He's not like a nincompoop. You know what I mean? Like you can actually believe that you know, with the character he's playing, that, you know, I mean, let's be honest, the whole movie he's going on this road trip helping Demi Moore because he's trying to get with her, you know, in a romantic sense. And like I don't think they would be an out of place couple, you know, if they were to be a couple.
And as what you were saying, I think you buy him even immediately in the whole introduction part of the film. You do buy him as this like financial expert and everything. Like, he's definitely this feels like a real character. This is one of the moments that's this is a great Taylor Negron moment where he's convincing Chevy Chase to try to evade the cop. He's like, you know, this is a provincial cop. Come on, you can lose him.
And what I thought was great about this is, you know, because they're in this kind of hotshot BMW car, and he's trying to tell him, oh, you know, you can outrun this shitty police car and all this kind of stuff, and he's kind of like challenging his manhood in front of Demi Moore, and like that kind of seems why Chevy kind of takes the bait a little bit, and but at the same time, like I like the actual you know, subtlety or you know, interplay with the reactions of Demi Moore. You can tell she actually doesn't want him to try to outspeed the cop. She's just like, what the fuck are you doing? This is like stupid. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Also, not, you know, for like a goofy little comedy like this, not that this is like an amazing car chase or anything, but this sequence right here where they end up on this little road with all these trucks, fairly decent action for like a movie like this, you know. You know, again, Dean Cundy working his magic here, but some really nice kind of choreography in these moments, and just kind of actually a little brief, exciting scene.
And you know, just everything from obviously like the shots from outside the car or second unit, the shots inside the car. You know, or the principal actors, and like, you know, cut to close-ups of facial reactions. Like, this is, like you said, like you wouldn't mistake this for the downtown San Francisco chase scene in The Rock, but it actually, for a first-time director, like you said, with Aykroyd and stuff, it kind of like, this was the era where, I'm not saying all studio movies were good, but it kind of reminds me of the era when pretty much most big budget studio movies were competent, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Maybe directing this sequence, he just locked back and remembered all the famous chase scene from Blues Brothers. Right. He was able to use some of that. Yeah,
because we were saying, Aykroyd didn't really want to direct the movie. He just wanted to make the movie, you know, the concept and stuff. And from what I was kind of like hearing and reading, it was pretty much all his like usual suspects were just busy at the time, like of directors that he liked to work with.
Well, I know Landis hated the script. I know he turned it down. And then there were some other directors who, they were interested, but they couldn't do it. And basically the studio, it sounded to me like the studio fairly pressured Aykroyd into just directing it. They were like, well, we'll do this, but we want you to direct so we can kind of have that as one of the pulls of it. He's like, okay, if that's what's going to take it to get it made, I'll do it.
Yeah, because originally he wanted to star in the Chevy Chase role and play the, you know, and I actually would really be intrigued by that version of the movie. But at the same time, if you can have both of them, you know what I mean? Like
and he still got to do a dual role. So
yeah, I mean, you know. Yeah, instead of a triple role or whatever. Now, I want to ask you, I mean, we haven't even seen Dan Aykroyd in this movie, but we're talking about the different roles he plays. Was there any part of you, Trev, because I kind of felt it, whereas I wish he would have, like, kind of showed up kind of sans makeup and had, like, a third role, or even if it was just brief, where, you know what I mean? Like, I wanted to see it.
It's kind of weird, right? Because you always have that, like, kind of that rule of threes in comedy. And the fact that him and both John Candy played two roles, you keep waiting for them both to maybe show up as one more. And yeah, with Aykroyd in particular, I think you're right. I think there's a couple other characters in this that maybe could have been him. And like you said, I think there is an interesting version of this film where he's playing the Chevy Chase part. But I will say, and this is no knock against Dan Aykroyd, who I also like and is also kind of a strange fellow, and obviously this film is a testament to that. But I don't know that Aykroyd could have played this character as well as Chevy Chase. Like, I don't know if he would have been as likable in the role. I know people are like, you're saying a Chevy Chase character is likable, but yeah, he is. Yeah. I mean, that's what we're talking about. And I think Aykroyd always has this kind of this level of more detached kind of I don't know. I guess that's strange to say because Chevy Chase kind of does this a lot too, but I just feel it would have a totally different vibe.
Mm-hmm. You know, speaking of Chevy Chase, the one thing that I kind of like, because like we said, it was kind of like cognizant that this was a 1991 film when I was watching it, and not the 80s, not the 70s. I kind of realized, like, even as the years went on, like, Chevy Chase always kind of had, like, the schmuck haircut.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I was thinking, was that like an okay haircut back then? But
yeah, like I think it was kind of acceptable. Just just kind of have your hair all around be the same length, put a slight part in it. Just kind of brushed over your forehead a little bit like that. But not really.
It really is the only haircut he had in the entire film.
And it's definitely like a little bit longer when he was younger. But like from SNL on, like until like obviously he became an old man and his appearance changed. But yeah, like all through his 20s, 30s, 40s,
Well, I'd say it's still the haircut he has. It's just different because he's balding on top.
Right. Because
it's gone white. But
yeah, I didn't even look it up. How old is Chevy Chase? Is he even in the 70s now?
I would think he's probably in his 70s.
Yeah.
Speaking of hair, also, so like Demi Moore, definitely one of the actresses that kind of popularized like the short hair on women, at this time. And I think like I'm not a huge fan of like the short haircut she has in Ghost, but man, I love her hair in this. I think she looks so cool, and to me like I still like really like that kind of haircut. I think maybe it's just because I had such a crush on her growing up.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about you, Trev, but to me, even as a kid, what was kind of iconic about Demi Moore was she was young, but she kind of had that raspy voice.
Yeah.
That always caught my attention. Like
now we're getting our first look at how just crazy like the production design of this film is, and this entire like drive into the judge's house, how bizarre it is.
And like you have like the collection of like the old junk, like the lawn jockeys, the swans, all kinds of things just everywhere, and it's just like it's really amazing that like there's like miles and miles of this driveway that's just filled with junk, and it's like obviously a big part of it is the fact that this guy's supposed to be over 100 years old and he's been ruling this town forever. But there's a lot of weird shit. Like I thought about taking a photo of it and reading it, but the shot was you couldn't read it all, but. That when they go over that bridge, there's like a wooden cutout of an angel, and if you pause it, Trev, it's like has this broken, and it says, "Hey, this is a message for hey yous guys. This village, no bad people, no thieves, no this, no that." So it's like from the very beginning, it's like the subtle details, like they literally raided for the production of this movie, like junkyards from hundreds of miles away to come bring in all this shit and just create a whole world. Now, what did you think, Trev? I didn't realize until doing some research. Did you know what a Shire Reeve is?
I did not know.
So basically. I thought it was just, I was like, is this some Lord of the Rings shit? Like, what is like, it just sounded so old-timey and fake, but it actually is legit old-timey. It actually is basically what we nowadays we would call a justice of the peace. That's what they called him back then, back in actually the feudal times. The Shire Reeve was like the local judge or whatever.
Look at how incredible this like production design is, though. Like how this is the thing about this film. So this is something I'm going to kind of bring up a few times for this, where I am surprised this is not a bigger cult commodity nowadays, in particular with horror fans. Now, obviously, this is billed sometimes as a horror comedy. It's much more on the comedy end, although we do know that, and I'm sure you read this too. I haven't listened to the commentary, so maybe he talked about this as well, but apparently this was originally a little darker and more violent, and it was cut down to PG-13. I would definitely love. Apparently, I'm sure that footage doesn't exist anymore. But boy, I would love to see the more horror-driven version of this. But I'm just surprised because there's obviously the characters are comedic, but this is a very creepy setting, and this really does work on a certain creep level, the same way like Texas Chainsaw Massacre does, the same way House of a Thousand Corpses does. Now, obviously, I'm not saying all those movies are equal in quality, but I'm saying that notion of ending up somewhere where you just have no idea what's going on and just surrounded by complete weirdos in a very disgusting, bizarre place. This is the thing. As a kid watching this, there was definitely a part of me that couldn't quite figure this movie out, but knew that what I was responding to was how this was aiming for that Texas Chainsaw Massacre vibe, right? But just in a more broadly comedic sense. And
what's funny is it is very TCM, but they kind of like got the original inspiration, Dan Aykroyd and his brother and their friend, from going to a screening of Hellraiser.
Yep.
And I thought that was funny because like I was almost like, I mean, they weren't trying to like rip anything off, but I was like, imagine if there was almost some Hellraiser-esque elements into this, like, you know what I mean? Now again, a great reveal. The judge is they don't really show him at first. He's kind of hidden behind a stack of books and whatnot. John Candy. You gotta love John Candy's hair here. Obviously, it's a prosthetic, but it's such a great look for him.
A nice, like, not that I'm going to act like this is like the most amazing screenplay or anything.
Yeah.
But you do, earlier on, you just have a nice sense of like what to come with John Candy's character. Because ultimately, you're already getting an idea that he's not too bad of a person. Mm-hmm. The fact that he's willing to overlook that entire car chase, right? Like, not even tell the Shire Reeve that happened. That's pretty impressive. You know?
Yeah. Like, he's, like, I always got the feeling, especially when you learn a little bit more of his character later, I always got the impression that he's trying to make it sound like their infraction, make it sound as light as possible so that, you know, hopefully they can actually survive. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You definitely get the sense that he does not like seeing people have to go through like the torture and death here. He's trying to do his best to help everybody. But yeah, and obviously too, I guess we should talk about too, is this whole premise of kind of this scene, what we're seeing right here. This is actually based on something real that happened to Dan Aykroyd. He was on a road trip and it was just a minor speeding ticket, right? Yeah, minor speeding ticket, and it was did he say it was like at 3 a.m. or something? Yeah, it was like 2 or 3 in the morning, and they were like, and the cop was like, "Oh, you got to go to court right now," and he's like, "Well, what do you mean? Like, just give me a ticket." No, you have to go to the judge. So he went before this really elderly old lady judge, like he kind of just like played along, and like he just ended up having tea with the lady, and he was there for like 3 or 4 hours. So I guess we should just talk about the judge here now. It's he's more than just a judge. Like, as we find out, he really kind of rules his family, I guess. He rules this whole local town, this mining town that was kind of stripped, and underneath the ground it's very volatile. There's coal fires, and obviously that plays later. But yeah, it's like this kind of like kangaroo court. How would you describe the judge? Boy, what an interesting character, right? Because he is, I don't want to say he's scary, but obviously there's a level like you don't want to end up in this guy's court. You would definitely feel uncomfortable right away. Right. But he's obviously pretty broadly comedic. To me, this is a good comedic version of a horror character. Because we're going to get into like kind of some really disgusting stuff with him later, in terms of like, even more of the prosthetic work and everything. Yeah. But it still feels like a character that comes from like an SNL performer. It's just the kind of broad comedic performance that you would expect here.
Yeah, because as a kid, like I kind of, I mean, SNL started before I was born, but I was kind of, when I was kind of like first kind of aware of shit and seeing movies and going to see movies with my mom and dad, I really got to see that whole boom of like I even remember going to see like Neighbors in the theater. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I just remember that whole boom of SNL performance. So like to me, like that's why I'm still kind of an SNL fan to this day. Is just like, to me, like that's where the comedy people of the kind of popular U.S. culture comes from. And like obviously Belushi had some good movies. Aykroyd's had a lot of good movies. Chevy Chase had a lot of good movies. Other people too, as along the way. And I kind of sucks that like nobody really makes those. Like, Lorne Michaels used to produce a lot of them for the people that were on the cast in the 90s. Like I miss that whole SNL movie thing. You know what I mean?
It is weird, right? Especially in an era where Netflix gives Adam Sandler so much money to do like his projects. I've heard people ask, like, why can't they take some money like that and just throw it to other like fresh off SNL performers and just ask them to do what we used to see in the 90s, right? Where you take a performer and just give them like a character-based movie. That's how Adam Sandler kind of made his name with movies like Billy Madison and Happy Gilmore and The Waterboy. Why isn't there a version of that for like Bill Hader? Why is there not a Jason Sudeikis character-driven film? All these like SNL people now, we just don't get that same. It's kind of like they all head into either doing their own shows, or they kind of try to jump right into more dramatic work. It's too bad.
The one that kind of made me, like, I do remember Neighbors, and I remember at the time Neighbors to me seemed like now I look back and it's like it's not as like weird as I remember, but it's a pretty weird movie. But I remember watching that as a kid, and I always got the feeling that this is like there's something different about this movie. This movie is more like a bad dream than it is like a movie. You know what I mean? Because like Belushi,
I haven't seen it in years, but that's another one I remember as being kind of like a dark comedy, right?
Yeah. And but the one that I was like really the fan of, Trev, and I'm sure a lot of it went over my head, like kind of half understood it, but I still remember going to see it. I loved Dr. Detroit, where Aykroyd's just a regular guy who has to impersonate this famous pimp, Dr. Detroit, and he kind of has this fake claw hand, and he's got the pimp. So, like, to me, Dr. Detroit, like, I didn't realize it was just like an over-the-top pimp caricature. Like, to me, Dr. Detroit was like a alter ego superhero type thing.
Well, this thing, you were asking me how I describe the judge, and you will say, well, I guess we probably should say something about good old Daniel Baldwin here. But,
yeah. Who at one time was the most controversial Baldwin. Now, now I don't know about that.
Yeah, I would say that's. I think he's easily been surpassed at this point, especially in the last few weeks, perhaps. Mm-hmm. But yeah, briefly going, we'll still have an opportunity to talk about Daniel Baldwin. Going back to the judge, there's just such a clear glee in Aykroyd's performance. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking about how, for someone who is this obviously very talented comedic performer, I was thinking back on a lot of his other films, and he didn't get the opportunity to do this that often. You know, play a character so outrageous and like under a full like makeup job. He's pretty much, you know, just himself in most of his movies. So I think that's kind of exciting too, to see here he plays two really bizarre, you know, prosthetic-driven characters, and you realize that, oh, this could have been like a whole side thing for him if people were kind of more willing to dive into that, right? After you see like how effective he is in this.
Well, one of my favorite Aykroyd performances is kind of the supporting character he plays in Grosse Point Blank. Like, I love the kind
He's great in that,
yeah, popcorn. but yeah, like I don't know, like I just always been an Aykroyd fan, and I mean, obviously I love Chevy Chase and other guys too, but like to the point where like whenever I watch Ghostbusters, I think Aykroyd's actually my favorite, even though he's kind of one of the ones, I mean, other than Ernie Hudson, who's like the complete straight man of Ghostbusters. I think Aykroyd, you know, he kind of, there's a lot of scenes where Ramis kind of gets to steal it with the Egon weirdness, and definitely Murray's just kind of shooting all over the place, you know.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's, you know, it's interesting because in recent years it's been easy for Aykroyd to become kind of a punchline to people, because he is, he's fairly, I don't want to say he's crazy, but he's got a lot of weird ideas, right? And you learn more about the various ideas he had for Ghostbusters sequels, and even the fact that one thing that's very true of Dan Aykroyd is he seems like someone who kind of overcomplicates a lot of his ideas and premises. Yeah. So like the fact that Ghostbusters originally, his conception was a space film, right? Set in outer space and then busting ghosts. Like, why that extra bit? You don't need that, right? How people kind of talked him into downplaying it to just having it be, you know, exterminators in New York, which is obviously much better. But, you know, as much as I used to kind of laugh about that, you think about how, he's one of the reasons Ghostbusters 3 never kind of happened, because he was coming up with just these ridiculous ideas for it. Ghostbusters Go to Hell and things like this, you know. I've come around to being like, that's what I just love about Dan Aykroyd. He's just so confident in how insane his ideas are. And he has no problem, like, going on talk shows and talking about his belief in ancient aliens, right? And crystal skulls. And he's just like and you look at a film like this, and this is probably the most Dan Aykroyd movie, right? This is like, everything that's strange about him is on screen here.
But you know what too is like, is what everybody says is like, you know, even Chevy Chase did the little interview, like everybody says like Aykroyd is like the ultimate collaborator. He will collaborate with you. He wants to, you know, he wants input. So like I think he's like the greatest guy to kind of get the ball rolling on a film premise, but then you just need another kind of personality to kind of rein some stuff in and modify it, and you know, so it doesn't go off the rails. Because it's kind of funny, because like we all take it for granted now because Ghostbusters is a brand name, Trev, and a logo and all that kind of thing, but Ghostbusters is, especially for 1984 whenever it came out, it's a fairly ambitious concept for a comedy film.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
We got to talk about the bone stripper here. Daniel Baldwin, who's kind of like a junior mafioso guy, kind of in this, the way they kind of portray it. Him and his crew, you know, they try to bribe their way out of it. Or actually, Chevy Chase tried to bribe his way out of it, but he tried to threaten John Candy with a gun, so they had to take him in. They had lots of coke, so the judge put him through the bone stripper, which is a roller coaster who then like kind of hits a stop. You fall out onto a conveyor belt, and a giant like carnival type ride, but it's full of pistons that tear you apart and just spit your bones out.
Although it is one of the first kind of concessions too. There's a part of me that always wishes like the bones would come out a little like nastier looking. They come out just like pure white, you know. But yeah, I definitely remember that. And you know, one thing I never noticed until this recent watch. This is the kind of thing that probably went over my head as a kid, or I just didn't pick up on the detail. There was a moment earlier when they first introduced the judge where they mentioned that his degree is in engineering. And I was like, oh, once you know that little bit, this all makes sense. Like this character designed the bone stripper. He designed the little train thing we're about to see on the table. So like all these like crazy contraptions, that's because that's kind of his hobby, right? Or like what he went to school for is making these kind of bizarre inventions.
Well, I was going to ask you, viewing this film again with all the little like gadgets and weird things, and the things that entertain him that he has built in this house, is like I took him to be like almost like a Willy Wonka, like an evil Willy. Well, I guess Willy Wonka is evil in a way, but even more like a evil Willy. I gotta say, this cracked me up. The oil kind of spigot thing and the giant can of Hawaiian Punch. Yeah.
And this is the scene. Like I think if you just watch Demi Moore during this entire scene, like her expressions and how she plays this is all fantastic. She's doing great work here. She's definitely not, for you said, coming off of a huge film and kind of at the one of the apex of her career. She doesn't think this material is below her. She's diving into this with the same enthusiasm as a lot of the other like more kind of seasoned comedic performers.
I mean, I gotta say, she was definitely a movie star at this point, but I would think anybody, at this time period, I would say there still was a nice little glow on the kind of SNL guys, this isn't that many years after Ghostbusters and stuff like that, you know what I mean? Like, I would think being in a movie with Dan Aykroyd and Chevy Chase, a comedy, would seem like an appeasing thing for somebody, you know what I mean? Like the fact that the movie was a box office bomb and it wasn't as well beloved as like Ghostbusters was and all that kind of thing. I think that's why for people in retrospect to be like, why would Demi Moore do this piece of shit? But
yeah,
at the time. So now we have the John Candy dual role. You wanted to talk about this, Trev?
Well, actually, I do want to talk about it because I think this. Okay, so there's obviously an argument that this is like easy, right? Well, just put a big guy in a dress and like that'll be instant laughs. And I know that the story of this is Dan Aykroyd just one day thought about the idea of John Candy in drag, couldn't stop laughing. It was like, I got to put that into a movie. But I will say, like, this is a testament to how great John Candy is for this. What's ultimately this like silent performance and it just being like an obvious joke. I really think he is actually quite funny as like that character. Right? The way he plays it, the mannerisms, the expressions, he's doing a really nice job of actually taking what could just be, it's funny because it's John Candy in drag, but it's a really nice like silent comedic performance.
Yeah, it's really like, and when she came on screen, I was like, how are they going to get around the voice? But then they just write in that she's mute, so thankfully he doesn't have to, put on a fake girl's voice. So the fact that he didn't have to really speak, like in the makeup job, like it's weird, but like I kept thinking I was looking at a woman. It's weird throughout the film. Like I'm never like it's like obviously it's John Candy, but it's like I always felt like I was watching a female character in the film and not a guy that's supposed to be in drag type thing. You know what I mean?
And it's nice it's in there because the other Candy character, the cop, actually is more of a straight man in this. He's not really that comedic of a character, but that also he does it so well. Again, this is one of the movies you watch and you just think of. This is true of pretty much any John Candy movie, but you watch this and just you're reminded of what a talent we lost there. To where just even in a smaller, two smaller roles in this, still can like steal a scene very easily.
Yeah, this is kind of a stupid thing to bring up, Trev, but we were watching this the other day. I was like, holy shit, this is just a concept I never thought about in probably 20, 30 years. But ants on a log.
Oh, yeah.
If people don't know, ants on a log there was a snack for kids that, it was probably popular in the 50s and 60s, but I remember it was big when I was a kid in the 80s, where you take a stalk of celery, fill it up with peanut butter, and then put raisins on top to make it look like ants crawling on a log. I thought that was a genius comedic thing to bring up. Just a weird thing to bring up in a comedy film.
Yeah. Yeah, this whole nursing, even this is that misdirect where they come out and they think they're serving dog, and it turns out to be hot dogs, but they're the most like disgusting looking hot dogs.
They're like gray. They're like almost like they're almost like Italian sausage looking, but they look almost like still raw. Like they're very like I'm a hot dog guy, Trev, and I'll eat anything brats, Metz, but to me these are fucking disgusting.
Now, this part speaks to that idea of Dan Aykroyd as like a collaborator, because I know they said this whole idea of the train and the table, that's something someone on set suggested. And they're just like, all right, well, let's do that. Let's build it and like do it. It wasn't necessarily an idea in the original script. So he was like very willing to take, probably because they're trying to just populate this insane world. So give me any ideas you have for that.
Yeah, I was gonna say the set design and just everything is just so ingenious in this film, and like even stupid shit like this train table that brings the condiments around for the hot dogs. This shot, obviously it's in the trailers and everything, but this shot when the old judge is trying to eat the hot dog and he's all like fumbling and you got ketchup and mustard and everything squirting, it's great.
Yeah. That's good gross talk comment. Now we got to talk about this.
Yeah. So the Chevy Chase looks at the judge, and his nose is suddenly a penis nose.
Yeah.
Which I think they like slipped that by, because I want to say that might have even been in some trailers or something. I think they slipped that by like just trying to not like have anybody like verbalize what it was, you know what I mean?
It's funny because this was a Mandela effect thing for me. So as I said, I hadn't watched this movie in a long time, and in my memory, because that's obviously that scene is so memorable, and we had the sequence later where we see that, you know, that entire like from his like nose down to his upper lip is like a prosthetic he has on.
Right.
And in my head, I always remember now from that shot that, oh, he's made his nose out of a penis. Like that's the weird thing about the character. But then it's like then you rewatch the movie, you're like, oh no, that's not the case. It's just this one little brief bizarre fantasy of Chevy Chase, and it's just like, well, that makes it even weirder. Like, why would he think that necessarily? But whatever, it's a great little visual gag.
See, my Mandela effect was when I watched the first time, and you know, whatever it was I thought he was more supernatural than he really is, and I thought his nose actually turned into that. It's not till seeing it later that I realized, oh, that's just what Chevy Chase thinks it looks like, because his nose does have that divot in the end, kind of. Yeah. You know. But yeah, like that was insane. So, like, go ahead, Trev.
I was just going to say, it's funny because, like, everyone is so freaked out by this whole, like, the train and everything. And I'm just thinking, like, I would actually think this was so funny and, like, cool. Like, I feel like I would like, almost start getting along with this family. Because I just think, you know, obviously the food looks disgusting. But the idea of a train in your dinner table that brings condiments around, that's cool. There's nothing scary about that or creepy. I just think that's a neat idea.
I would almost be like, obviously they're creeped out because they fell through a trap door in the court and, you know, into a basement or whatever, but now they're having dinner. I would actually have more hope that I would survive seeing the train, be like, oh, maybe, you know, this isn't as insidious as I thought. Mm-hmm.
Maybe this is a good time to talk, because this is, I know there's a moment coming up soon here, or maybe it's a little later, but since, you know, we have a moment here, we want to talk about this Blu-ray and the audio issues. So we are both watching the brand new Shout Factory, Shout Select Blu-ray of Nothing But Trouble. So first of all, I do want to say, is it strange to you that this was not a Scream Factory release? I think this has got enough horror elements that it feels like it should be one of those instead of Shout Select.
You know, exactly, and they could have very easily got an artist to paint a cover with the judge on it. It could have definitely had that Scream Factory cover look to it. Yeah. You know what I mean?
But so maybe not surprisingly, and that's what I want to talk about. This is a already controversial Blu-ray release, and Goat and I were talking about this before we started recording, but we both noticed it watching it. This Blu-ray, I'm very excited to have this movie on Blu-ray now. I'm happy that it's getting, you know, some more attention and kind of coming back. But boy, is the audio mix atrocious.
It is.
Blu-ray. And, you know, we're waiting to see if Shout Factory will once again have to, you know, will the pressure be high enough for them to once again issue replacement discs, which has been kind of a consistent problem for them over the last few years. Is it still bizarre to you that this company has such a name that we've seen these problems so often with them? I mean, how many releases have they had in the last, like, decade that have required replacement discs?
At least 6 that I can think of, and I have a couple of them that got the replacement discs. So I guess what we should talk about is this movie comes with this Blu-ray, I should say, comes with the DTS HD Master stereo soundtrack, which if anybody kind of collects older films on Blu-ray, you know, a lot of times, unfortunately, even some movies that had 5.1 sound mixes, I don't know, when they license them out, they end up with, you just get these stereo sound mixes and stuff. But this one it's very bizarre stereo sound mix, because the actual dialogue of the film jumps from speaker to speaker, doesn't it, Trev?
Yeah, mid-line sometimes.
Yeah, mid-line. So, like my setup, I have, like, your kind of normal 5.1 stereo surround, whatever, you know, stereo sound, or no, not surround sound, I guess I should say. And I usually let my receiver upmix the stereo to surround, and it usually does a great job, keeps the dialogue pretty much in the center channel and whatever. But this, like you said, like, I had the dialogue jumping from in front of me to my surrounds in the back to the whatever, and you were listening on a soundbar setup, and even in just the soundbar, you could hear it jumping from side to side.
Yeah, and the soundbar was, like, very evident when it was doing that. And then on the special features, the interviews themselves sound fine, but whenever they cut to, like, clips of the movie, it sounds like it's like being like it's like an old, like, 4th generation VHS dub or something.
Right.
It's just bizarre. And, like, this is the thing. This is what sucks, because Shout Factory and Scream Factory, you know, obviously one company, but they are kind of the go-tos here in North America for genre fare and, kind of pulling these more obscure movies and giving them these special editions. And I typically want to get excited whenever they announce a release, but now you always have to be kind of suspicious and wondering if should you wait to hear some reviews. Although luckily this one was cheap enough and, whatever. Like I'm not if I don't get a replacement for this, it's not the end of the world. You can still watch the film. But like another example of this recently is I was very excited to finally have Brotherhood of the Wolf coming out on Blu-ray.
Yeah.
And I ended up not even getting it because I just read about how the subtitles that they have on their version are so terrible. Apparently, instead of using like a previously existing subtitle track, they ran the movie through some like computer program that automatically subtitles it. And people had screen grabs of comparing the new subtitles to the old ones, how a lot of the dialogue was overly simplified. And then there's certain sequences where it just says, the subtitle actually says, dialogue unintelligible, even though the previous versions had the actual dialogue.
Yeah, right.
It's just like, are you kidding me? Like you can't even like, and that's one where maybe because it's such a small niche release, they are obviously not even going to bother fixing that. So I was just like, yeah, I guess I'll just hold on to my DVD.
Yeah, like, I mean, I don't know. And other companies are having problems too without, going in a 20-minute spiel. Like I've had some problems with it. But I will say it's like the norm now is more for problems on 4K discs. Like for the most part, like Blu-ray encoding and production has been, it's been going on for 15 years now. It's just weird that we're ended up with these issues. If I had to guess, I would, because like I said, sometimes films that had 5.1 theatrical mixes get turned into stereo for home releases to save money or whatever. Sometimes they can't. And I wonder if this was actually a stereo. This is just my theory. I don't know for sure because I haven't seen anybody else say it for sure. But I'm wondering if the thing they had was a surround mix and they try to convert it down to stereo and just doing that somehow just screwed up what should be in the center channel of the dialogue or whatever. Because there's like some movies that don't upconvert from stereo to surround. I've noticed very well. But I've never like you'll have some dialogue leaking into the surround sounds, but I've never seen anything jump from speaker to speaker to speaker, like you said, even mid-line. Like there's clearly was a mixing problem.
People love to talk about things that were in movies a lot when you were a kid and kind of have like faded from pop culture. One is like quicksand, right? How quicksand was like, used all the time and we don't see much more. When's the last time you saw a movie that had the old eyeballs in the painting?
Like you
just noticed there.
It was great. Yeah, the eyeballs. Although quicksand did make a return in a recent film. I don't know if you remember, Trev. The Rise of Skywalker. Yeah. That was the level of screenwriting on display. So I would say this is almost like what you say, Trev. This is like the most kind of like borderline Texas Chainsaw part of the film in terms of they're wandering through the dilapidated and scary mansion and finding weird shit in room to room. You know what I mean? Yeah.
This is the one with the bats, right? Yeah, the bats and all the bat shit. I love the next part. I think is where there's actually like a crypt inside one of the rooms.
Yeah, it's just like a closet that's a crypt.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. But yeah, it's just like, and you look at this, all this had to be like, this is almost like a Disneyland haunted mansion type vibe going on here with all these.
This thing, like, where's Universal to make a Nothing But Trouble maze for one of their Halloween horror nights?
That would be amazing.
What do you think of the narrative decision to kind of have Taylor Negron and his sister like duck out of the film, as we just had just a few minutes ago? Like, it kind of makes me wonder, like, why were they in the movie? I mean, obviously, I know what the purpose is ultimately to resolve John Candy's character in a certain way,
right.
But it's just bizarre that you take them out of the equation so early.
Well, I was going to ask you about this, Trev. Is the reading, because they didn't really mention it on the commentary. The material I read that said it was kind of like that this was supposed to be a R-rated, kind of more horror-centric thing, and that there was kind of like, after shooting, the studio was like, no, we want PG-13, and they had like a short film delay of when it was originally supposed to come out. It was only like 2 or 3 months they delayed it because they wanted to rework it in the editing to make it PG-13. But to my knowledge, there was no reshoots. So I'm like, where could that gore or just whatever more harder material, like what could it have been in? Because pretty much other than the Baldwin character group of people, like the kind of obnoxious Italian people that show up and get killed. There's no victim. So like, where else could this have been? You know,
that's what I wonder. I was wondering because like, yeah, I agree that I didn't read about significant reshoots. It made me wonder if there was maybe more. Did they find victims?
Right.
You know, is that the thing that we saw? Because we obviously things were cut, and that's where I think there's probably missing footage, which unfortunately will probably just remain missing. No one's going to be searching for nothing but trouble. You know, this isn't London After Midnight or anything. Nobody's worried about tracking this down.
Right.
But yeah, I would love to see it. And I would just assume maybe there was bodies in the house because we were talking about like obviously the TCM or House of a Thousand Corpses vibe. Couldn't you see Rob Zombie? I bet you Rob Zombie likes this movie. I feel like this is a movie that he'd be like all about.
I was gonna break out that shtick, Trev, but I'll go ahead and do it anyway, even though I acknowledge it's shtick. So I was gonna kind of ambush you during the court scene and say what, you know, Rob Zombie gets slammed for House of a Thousand Corpses being a direct rip-off of TCM, but after watching this, I think it's actually, in a lot of ways, more directly tied to Nothing But Trouble. Imagine if Rob Zombie was solely influenced by this one. I mean, even the shots of the tow truck here are just like in House of a Thousand Corpses.
Maybe we'll get the remake, and we know who will play the Demi Moore part, that's for sure.
And by the way, I approve of that casting 1,000%. But yeah, the soundtrack will be the best when he does like the title song, the dun 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 dun. Yeah, he's got a house and he's a judge. Dun, dun, dun. Valkenvania, yeah, baby, crib if you want it, 'cause I want hot dogs. Wow.
I could definitely see like a Rob Zombie song called Valkenvania. That's for sure.
Yeah.
We should mention too. We didn't bring it when you met. We talked about Valkenvania, and I would assume you know this as well, Go. But Valkenvania, based on Centralia, which is the real town in Pennsylvania that for decades now has had a fire burning underneath it.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, you didn't? Do you know? So you don't know about Centralia?
No.
Centralia is also the real life inspiration for Silent Hill. That's what Silent Hill is based on. So it is an actual town in Pennsylvania where there was an explosion and a fire in the mines in the town, and they've never been able to put it out. And to this day, it's still burning. The town has been, the government has stepped in and said nobody can like move into the town or live there anymore.
Wow.
From what I've understood, like I haven't checked up on it recently, but like the last time people were talking about this, which was probably like a decade or so ago, there were like 2 families who refused to move because they couldn't force them to. Right. So even though it's kind of deemed like, you know, it's a health hazard to be there, there were these 2 people that were still living in Centralia. But you can kind of go by there, you can drive by it, but you're not supposed to go in there. But you can find pictures of it online. So yeah, just an interesting that exists in America somewhere, a town that just has this fire constantly burning under the town. And you know, if you live there too long, obviously you could have serious health problems.
Right. This is interesting. Yeah, I'm actually halfway through a Silent Hill rewatch right now.
Silent Hill, that's a good movie, underrated movie, I think.
Yeah, like I liked it. Just
Speaking of Christoph Gans.
Yeah, just rewatching it, I was like, why is this movie 2 hours? Silent Hill.
Yeah,
that's the only weakness of it. Is there's a lot of repetitive scenes in it.
Mm-hmm. But creepy in a way that you don't typically expect to see in a video game based horror movie of that era. Right. Like it actually has some really effective kind of nightmarish imagery.
Yeah, I didn't mind. He didn't make it, but like I didn't mind the sequel, and I saw it in theaters. But that's kind of why I'm doing the rewatch. Is I recently got a copy of the second one. I wanted to rewatch it. I was like, I didn't realize it actually is a direct sequel to the first one. So I'm like, let me rewatch the first one because
Sean Bean comes back, right?
Yeah, he does. And then the girl is supposed to be like the same girl grown up. So I was like, I'll rewatch it, whatever. But I know people hated the second one, but I don't know. I'll give it a chance on the rewatch. Now here's the judge unmasking. We got to talk about this.
This looks great. This is like that visual. So there you go. This is pure horror. Now the way Chevy Chase plays that is obviously quite funny. But...
Yeah. Well, the judge takes off his hair. I mean, no surprise there. He's supposed to be. How old is he, Trev? 108, I think.
Something, yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, he fought World War I. So.
Yeah. So I mean, if you live that old, you probably wouldn't have like much hair or whatever. But what did you think of the shape of his head? Like, is he supposed to be a mutant or like what?
No, I don't take it. I just think he's got like that little bit like divot in his head a little bit too. Yeah. But I never took it that like I don't know. Maybe it's just that he's old or obviously old and withered. Could also be a byproduct of living in this town, as we said. We were just talking about how like what does living in this town do to you necessarily? So I think that's part of it. I think that speaks to also 2 characters we'll have coming up soon, right? Like why do those characters exist in this world? It might be a byproduct of what are the potential health hazards of reproducing in this town.
Exactly. And what do you make of taking the nose off? Was that?
Well, I love it. I think again, this is the thing. As I said, when I was a kid, the moments that were speaking to me was going, okay, this is for the most part, it's a goofy comedy, but there are these horror elements in this. And I don't want to say this obviously wasn't the first horror comedy I ever saw, but certainly, this is an early horror comedy for me. And kind of that understanding that like, oh, this Dan Aykroyd is playing with like the horror tropes I also love, but putting them into a more broadly comedic film. And yeah, when you're like, behind a wall looking at a guy and he just pulls his nose off in front of you, that's actually pretty gross and pretty, intense. So I like it. And I really like, I think that's a great makeup look on him with the hair off and the nose off. He really has this like kind of Crypt Keeper appearance that is really, really effective.
Right. And I guess he also has a prosthetic leg. I'm guessing that was from the war.
Yeah.
But I just wondered, did the nose fall off due to old age, or is it a facial war injury? I'm curious.
Leprosy, who knows?
Oh yeah,
this salvage yard is awesome too.
Yeah, we should mention too. When they first came in at the beginning of the movie, like that awesome matte shot of pretty much the junkyard goes on for miles and miles. Like it almost reminds you of that in shot of From Dusk Till Dawn when you see the back of the junkyard and it's like actually
that's awesome.
Temple or whatever. I wish more people did matte shots. Now, I don't even know how to describe these guys, Trev. Like they're like human or they're like adult babies, I guess. Mm-hmm. So we have the new characters introduced here. Because the movie's about 3/4 of the way through, and we're still kind of exploring, finding out these different characters that live in this mansion or around this mansion. In these guys' case, they're not allowed in the house because they're too nasty, they're too sloppy. This is these giant human babies. One is named Bobo, and the other one is Little Devil.
Yeah. And again, this is Dan Aykroyd's dual performance, and this is not a character he even wanted to play,
right?
But he found an actor to do the one and couldn't find anyone else willing to do the other one, so he's like, I'll do it. But I heard that was pretty tough for him to try to direct in this makeup, which you understand when you look at how involved it is and just how elaborate.
Yeah, I don't know which character he was playing on the day. I'm guessing the judge, but the day where they shot the digital underground scene, he actually passed out. And he missed part of the shooting day. Somebody had to take over. But a fun fact here: the other guy, if I'm not mistaken, I think Aykroyd plays Bobo, and they're kind of identical, like these giant baby men. They look exactly the same. They have the same little tuft of hair on the top of their head. They're kind of like Baby Huey types, I guess. The other one, I'm forgetting his name a little bit. It's like John Valkich or something like that. He was actually somebody that Aykroyd knew for years and years, going back to the Second City days. And he was actually the guy, believe it or not, Trev. He also was a good artist. So whenever Aykroyd was doing a pitch for a movie, he would kind of do the mock-up art and stuff. He actually designed Little Devil here. Actually designed the Ghostbusters logo.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, those characters seem like they stepped out of a Terry Gilliam movie or something. Mm-hmm. They definitely feel like they could be in Freaked, the Alex Winter film.
Yes.
They definitely seem. Well, that's the thing. You say they seem out of place in this, or it feels like that at first. But that's the thing. Their appearance in this just ultimately adds to the overall odd vibe of this. And this is what we're talking about now. We're definitely in the sequence or from this point on. When Go and I were talking at the beginning about how this is just such a strange movie. There's obviously already been a little of that, but. You wouldn't see Bobo and Little Devil in a studio movie nowadays. Right. I don't think necessarily,
unless it was a Rob Zombie movie. Again, very Rob Zombie-esque. Dan Aykroyd did not realize he was laying down the blueprint for Robert Zombie to perfect his cinema.
Maybe we should get Dan Aykroyd to make a Halloween movie.
Well, I mean, compared to some of the other entries in the franchise, I don't think he would make it any worse. I
have to imagine he probably, in terms of the overall Halloween franchise, he probably loves the Cult of Thorn stuff. That seems like it would speak to his sensibilities.
I kind of like the Cult of Thorn stuff. I kind of just wish it was done better, to be honest with you. Well, I'll put it this way. The Cult of Thorn stuff isn't that great, the way it's executed, but I think it's interesting that I kind of miss that. I wish the Halloween franchise had more of a through line like that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a hard franchise to have a through line. That's why it's probably never been a franchise. But.
That's why they have to keep bringing in new continuities of Jamie Lee and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I did enjoy the controversial Halloween kills. I will say that.
Yeah, I wasn't a huge fan, but whatever. I also didn't understand why anybody. To me, it was just one of those movies where people seemed like they were either too defensive of it or hated it too much.
Right.
It struck me as the kind of movie that it was like you watch it and you're like, oh, okay, and then you move on with your life. So
you know how I am,
it was
Trev.
weird that became such a flashpoint for everyone.
Yeah, you know how I am, Trev. If it's part 9, I'm going a little more. I'm giving it a little more leeway. I'm not going to be overly critical. No, I don't think we talked about it because what we said, like, there's all these contraptions in this house. The judge actually has something, so he doesn't have to, like, go up and down the stairs. He actually has this, like, chair that he sits on, and, like, a platform goes in between the levels. It's like, I guess, like a crude elevator, but it's really just a platform with a chair on it with these giant straps that lower him into different rooms of the house. I thought that was actually pretty ingenious.
Oh, and I had forgotten about this, but actually, we just got our answer about his face. That's that moment where Chevy Chase looks at that article on the wall there, and it says that the judge was hurt in like a foundry blast.
That's right. I forget about that. Yeah, because I had noticed that when I watched it, and I was like trying to read it, but then I was like into the scene too.
I think we've talked about this with other movies we've done of this era, but this is another thing where, like I said, like at any moment in this film, you can just entertain yourself by looking in the background. This is a production design, like, dream kind of film. And that's the thing is, comedies nowadays are so cheap. And just think about how bizarre this movie is, but the fact that they gave it enough of a budget for this house to look this incredible and have this much random shit always happening in the background. Like, obviously a movie like this would not be made on this scale today. Everything would be so much more downplayed and smaller looking.
Yeah. Which I guess we should say that's a big reason why this film didn't generate any money at the box office, but it probably, even if it would have done a little bit better, I think it was a pretty much an uphill battle to profitability since they spent about $40 million on this.
Yeah. Pretty crazy to think there was a time where studios were just giving Dan Aykroyd $40 million.
Well, I mean, you got to think about the time when he was pitching this. We're talking, only 5 or 6 years after Ghostbusters. I mean, I think people were willing to listen.
But after Ghostbusters 2, which was not that big of a success, so.
Which I got to say, Ghostbusters 2 was a movie I just always written off. Like I saw it, I was like, oh, not as good as the first, whatever. But like, I rewatched it like a month or two ago, and I was like, this is actually interesting, because usually with sequels, they go bigger and better, and just it becomes more empty and hollow, and just special effects. Ghostbusters 2 is weirdly a relationship movie. It's weird.
Yeah, Ghostbusters 2 is another movie that I think people are overly critical of. I think it's obviously not Ghostbusters, but it's not as bad as people make it out to be. It's just it's a lesser sequel that happens, but it's completely watchable.
Also, too, I mean, I've been guilty of this over the years, too, Trev, of various movies, but especially when the first entry of something is just so great, you're like, what? Don't fuck it up with sequels that aren't worthy or whatever. But at the same time, you kind of have to get over that and just try to judge a movie as best you can. Like, do I like this movie as its own movie? Like, just saying, oh, it's not as good as the original, to me is kind of like a hollow, criticism.
Yeah, because you can just accept that immediately, right? Okay, it's not the original. So as you just said, like, what is it if it's not that? This John Candy here is very, very funny.
Yeah, we should say that John Candy, as the woman, they've set it up where they're gonna force Chevy Chase to marry her, and he's like literally in shackles and chains now. Chevy Chase is. And this was kind of like one of my favorite kind of what I was talking about of Chevy Chase, with the way he kind of like, is naive and kind of whip pans the dialogue and stuff and kind of plays along, and because he has no choice. I mean, he realizes at this point if he doesn't play along, they'll kill him. He's seen the piles of bones hidden in the walls and everything. So
this is actually very reminiscent of. Were you a big Tales from the Crypt guy, Goat?
I was and I wasn't, just from the fact that when it pretty much had the majority of its run, we had just moved, and my neighborhood like literally did not have cable laid yet, and it was before satellite. So eventually my buddies got cable, so I would it was like the thing to do when we did sleepovers. We pretty much, like, if it was on HBO, like, we would always watch Tales from the Crypt, but it wasn't like something where like I had access where like I've seen the majority of episodes, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I'll come back to the point I was going to make. I just want to point out this is another great to me more part. This is one of the parts that I've always remembered and stuck with me is talking about her comedic performance where she's playing cards with Bobo and Little Devil, and she's kind of talking to them the way they talk. I love when she's like doing that. Well, no, that's because Bobo does this, like that. She's very funny in that. But no, there's an episode of Tales from the Crypt with I believe it's Ed Begley Jr. and Tim Curry. Ed Begley Jr. is a traveling salesman who ends up. It's the same kind of idea where he ends up going to this house where the entire family, every member of the family, is played by Tim Curry. And he eventually gets trapped there, and they're forcing him to marry like the daughter, which is Tim Curry playing a woman. So that's what this actually kind of reminded me of.
Yeah, I think I've actually seen that episode. Now that I think about it, but
we can't not talk about this. But
we got to talk about it. This. Was kind of like the thing that got me and all my friends, because I was like probably in junior high at this point when this film came out. This was like the thing that made this the hip and cool movie for the 8th and 9th graders at the time. The appearance of Digital Underground, because like Dan Aykroyd, usually when you say Trev, when you see like musical acts in films, it's usually a couple years after their heyday. Like Aykroyd got these guys like literally in their heyday. Like Digital Underground was really big for a year or two, and he got them right in the smack middle. Like other than the original Humpty Dance song, this was pretty much their biggest song.
I was gonna say, is this post or pre Humpty Dance?
It's post. So the album with Humpty Dance, my buddy had the cassette, which ironically the cassette of their first major record, Sex Packets. If you get the cassette, you get like 3 extra songs. It's weird, but yeah. So that album was 90, and then they did this song. This song came out when the film did for 91. There's a great tie-in video, which I don't think it's on the disc. I looked it up on YouTube, which is really really bizarre and politically incorrect now, but. Yeah, so like Digital Underground, and this is where, because we talked about the dual roles, right, Trev? Like Aykroyd plays 2 roles, Candy plays 2 roles, just by the nature of having Digital Underground in, there's a guy playing 2 roles here. So Shock G, the rapper, and Humpty Hump are the same person. So like for these shots, like if you notice, you never see Shock G's face full on while you see Humpty Hump, and vice versa. Because they were like, switching costumes, and his brother would play the other character while
Humpty was definitely his best character, right?
Yeah.
That's the one I always remember, and I love the nose and everything. Yeah, it's great. This is also the film debut of Tupac Shakur.
It is. Tupac. Digital Underground was a very interesting group. Like they were like an actual group, and they would have members like rotate in and out on literally a album by album basis, almost tour by tour basis, and. Yeah, they just lightning in a bottle. This is when Tupac has actually a verse where he raps on this song. But this is at the time we didn't really know who Tupac is, but when he made that movie Juice a year after this, we're like, oh, the guy from Juice was also in Nothing But Trouble.
Yeah, it's a good song. It's a song I've always remembered too.
Yeah.
What do you think of this whole because this to me strikes me as like a very 80s or early 90s thing. The fact of just even bringing in a popular artist and grinding the movie to a halt to have like a musical number. Like, what do you miss that? Do you feel like it's out of place in this film?
No,
like,
I miss it big time.
It definitely adds like a weird character to the film, right?
Yeah. And I think too, like Aykroyd talked about it on his interview in the desk, and also the historian guy talked about it. I think it takes a lot of people by surprise because. They think the judge is just going to be one note, because he thinks Chevy Chase is a banker, even though Chevy Chase isn't, and that's why he goes so hard on them. But, like, a lot of people think the judge is just purely evil, and he just wants to murder everybody. But it's actually not the truth. He finds out that this group, Digital Underground, they get pulled over, whatever, brought to the court. They say they're musicians, so he says, okay, prove that you're a musician. I mean, not that like that would really matter, but to him it does. So, he likes their music. He actually participates. He gets in on his piano in it, and he has such a good time that he lets them go. And I think that actually, like, that's something, like you said, like, oh, a movie now wouldn't grind to a halt to do something like that. But I think including that musical number, I mean, obviously, in this movie, it's because it's Dan Aykroyd and the guy loves music, but, I think that actually just that moment and that performance gives more depth to the judge that he lets them go.
It humanizes him, right? Especially he even joins in, or he pulls out his his organ and starts. Well, that sounds bad. He pulls out his organ, but he starts playing his piano, and joins in. the group is all into it too.
Yeah, the hot background dancer girls, they're all dancing with him and stuff. And he kind of, as hobbled as he is, when he's playing the music, he kind of gets more spry. And I don't know if it's sped up or weird, but that weird, like, back move that Aykroyd does, like, when he's playing the organ, he's getting all excited. Like, I really love that part.
It feels like one of those scenes that I wonder, was there a music video version of this that would have played on MTV? It feels like it's designed for that. There was, okay.
So that's what I was going to say, just real quick. It's a very bizarre music video where it's basically a mini drive-in where, like, the group pulls in multiple vehicles and the movie's playing on the drive-in screen, and they cut it. It's one of those ones too, Trev, where they cut in clips from the movie into the video. Mm-hmm. And pretty much Digital Underground, like, they take turns, like, doing the different verses, because there's, like, a verse you don't see in the movie, and, like, pretty much they're a different ethnic group every time. So, like, when Humpty Hump does his verse, they're dressed up as, like, basically, like, Chinese farmers with, the hats on and everything. When another guy does their verse, like, they're all dressed for some reason as Hasidic Jews. And then there's another part where Humpty Hump again raps, and he's or maybe it's Chak G, maybe it's his part, but they're dressed like Native Americans, and it's very weird. And there's, like, a part where they scroll by NWA. They're just there sitting on a car top. It's actually Dr. Dre and Eazy-E, and then Dan Aykroyd is there dressed in the same manner that NWA is. So I guess Dan Aykroyd was an unofficial member of NWA for a day.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, the way actually Digital Underground got into the film was Dan Aykroyd went to one of their concerts in L.A., and he went in the back to talk to them that he was doing this movie, and he wanted to include a group, and he smoked a joint with them, and he just talked them into coming doing the movie.
I wonder why the Dan Aykroyd's brief involvement with NWA wasn't covered in Straight Outta Compton. It should have been
that movie was long enough, right? Like,
mm-hmm.
That movie was long enough. They should have got to that, I think. Or at the very least, he could have played the old Jerry guy or whatever. Where does well, I guess it's not called NWA, it's called Straight Outta Compton. Where does that rank to you on your list of biopics, or musical biopics, I should say?
I wasn't super into it, honestly. I have a hard time with biopics in general. There's a few I like, but I think that was one where I thought the fact that it was made by them allowed them to tell their version of the story, and I felt like a lot of really interesting, compelling parts of their history that are a little less flattering were left out, obviously. So yeah, I mean, I get why people responded to it. Really good performances. It's decent enough at giving, like, a Wikipedia recap of their career, I suppose. Yeah. But I wasn't super into it as a movie. But that's pretty tough. There's not too many of those music biopics I like. I like Walk the Line. But in general, I would always almost 9 times out of 10, I'd rather just watch a documentary about the band.
Right. I think it's fun, like with the NWA film, Straight Outta Compton. I think it's fun to kind of see the time period recreated in a way.
Yeah.
But if I had to pick one or the other, I'd rather watch CB4.
Oh, for sure. CB4 is great. Or Fear of a Black Hat.
Oh, dude, Fear of Black Hat, like I said, like, a lot of these boutique labels have been coming through my Blu-ray Holy Grails. I've been getting them a lot lately. Fear of the Black Hat is one of the ones, like, I remember I saw that in an art house theater. I bought the soundtrack CD. Like, I just love that movie. Rusty Cundiff, man. Like, man, yeah. He was on fire for a couple years there. So Chevy Chase gets thrown to the bone stripper now because he was supposed to marry John Candy, female John Candy.
Eldona.
Eldona, yeah, that's right. I want to say Caldona, but yeah, Eldona. And he was like, he finally got out of line enough where the judge was like, fuck it, I'm going to feed you to the bone stripper. And I thought it was funny, Chevy Chase, he gets spared because the bone stripper breaks down, but he's, for some reason, like, it stops spinning the pistons, but he somehow still gets shot out the tube at the end. I thought that was weird.
Yeah. Different contraptions, I guess, different motors.
Yeah. I do like the pile of bones and everything here, though. It's very horrific. Like, I guess in a weird way, too, like, this will, like, maybe if you're going to do, like, a double bill at a drive-in or a repertory theater, I think maybe in a weird way, this would kind of play well with Wes Craven's People Under the Stairs.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I can totally see that.
And, like, even like, beyond, like, the boneyard and all that kind of shit, just when Chevy Chase is running through the junkyard, to me, that's kind of like the scariest part. So my only criticism of this film, Trev, is you had the I guess they're supposed to be Argentinian. They had Argentinian passports, but the Argentinian brother and sister, they offered.
Yeah, because he calls them Brazilianaires. Right?
Yeah. They offered to pay for John Candy escape, and like they don't you don't really see him agree, but it kind of like leaves you hanging as to what he did with them. Mm-hmm. So like this whole time, you really don't know if there's two characters, Taylor Negron and the other lady. Like you really don't know if they're alive or dead.
Yeah, I mean, there's hints, right? Because obviously someone let Chevy Chase and Demi Moore out of that room, so you get a sense. Okay, so John Candy is trying to at least give them a fighting shot now because they said also let our friends out. But yeah, I do think it leaves. Well, when we get to it near the end, maybe I'll remember to point out how I feel like it kind of, there's a potential plot there that they could have picked up on that they kind of just abandoned. But yeah, whatever. Where are you at on? I was just curious because I was just thinking about. I was actually just thinking about how good I actually think John Candy is in like the kind of slightly more serious cop role in this, and thinking how I was just thinking like, I would have. Too bad there was never a franchise where John Candy had a character like that, like a noir kind of detective with like slight comedic elements to it, because I think he could have like pulled it off really well. Yeah. And then what popped in my head, and I want to ask, Goat, in terms of John Candy, where are you at on Who's Harry Crumb? Because that's another movie I watched all the time as a kid.
Yeah, that was one I didn't really see it. I don't think right when it came out, because I remember watching it on TV a couple of times. Like I liked it, and of course, there's always the great thing where the fake beard lands on the ladies. Yeah. Yeah. But I liked it, but yeah, it's not top tier to me. Like when it comes to John Candy, I'm more of a you know what? I think actually my favorite John Candy shit as a kid was I think it was actually probably Great Outdoors.
Oh, great! That's mine. That's my number one John Candy. Yep.
And I enjoyed Summer Rental. Who's Harry Crumb? Obviously, it's great in terms of watching John Candy because he's the lead role and he plays all these weird dress up things. But even as a kid, it kind of like was like a little too silly for me.
Yeah. Like, I mean, was it Delirious, where he's the soap opera writer?
Delirious I picked up about 10 years ago at a Big Lots for a $3 DVD, and I just watched it for the first time, and I'm just kind of like, oh no, I'm sorry, it's not Delirious. I'm thinking Going Berserk. Yeah, you know what? I actually I haven't ever seen Delirious now that I think about it.
Oh, it's a good concept. He's like a soap opera writer who gets like hit on the head and wakes up inside the soap opera he writes.
Right. Yeah, I remember that. I remember the previews for that, but I don't think I've ever seen it. Like at all.
People loved soap opera comedy back then. You had Soap Dish, Delirious.
You know what's weird though is like it didn't. I mean, I could be 1,000% wrong, Trev. I could look up Box Office Mojo and prove me wrong. But I feel like the only films of John Candy's that were really like big hits. I mean, like the ones he starred in, like was really like Uncle Buck and maybe Summer Rental.
Yeah, Uncle Buck is definitely his biggest hit, and really kind of the only like pop culture phenomenon movie he had.
Yeah.
Too bad that he was then supplanted in most people's head as Uncle Buck by Kevin Meaney, who of course played the part in the Uncle Buck TV show.
And I don't get me wrong, I like Kevin Meaney, but
well, who doesn't? I mean, that's not right. I still hear people quote that all the time.
Yeah, I think Uncle Buck is a one and done. I mean, because you had the team up of the budding Macaulay Culkin, and I didn't, because I actually watched the Uncle Buck TV show too. It never caught the.
There was 2 Uncle Buck TV shows. There's the Kevin Meaney one, and then there's like a more recent one with Mike Epps as Uncle Buck.
Oh, I think you're right. Oh, yeah. I mean, I know you're right, but I totally forgot about it. I just remember the Kevin Meaney one.
This is pretty cool. I like this whole like watermelon like carb this contraption that's going to slice Demi Moore into pieces. This is where we actually getting like some legit kind of action beats here, which is again fun to have in a what would ultimately be probably more simple comedy nowadays. You couldn't see Chevy Chase action hero too much.
I just wonder how much of like a really straight, because by the way, I love the movie as it is. I love the way it plays. It kind of has this weird thing where it has like 4 or 5 different endings at the end. Yeah. Like you think it's wrapping up and then it just keeps going. But other than that, like it's hard to say, because when I saw this movie as a kid and I loved it because how weird it was. I mean, I say a kid, but I was probably like 13 or 14 when I saw it, but you know what I mean? But I was just like, I always thought this was like the funnest movie, and it's like, yeah, it had the backdrop, but to me this was more in the vein of something like Gremlins than it was Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's like, yeah, there's a threat there, but the comedy and the kind of fun adventure spirit of it overrides more than, you know.
Well, that's what I mean. That's where you wonder, like, because I know the story, like you said, the stories they went and saw Hellraiser, and whatever audience they were seeing it with was laughing a lot.
Yeah.
It's kind of surprising me. I was like, what audience was laughing at Hellraiser?
Yeah, that's bizarre, because to me, Hellraiser was the pitchiest black that horror could get when I was 10 years old when I saw it.
But they had that idea of, like, let's try to make like a horror like that like allows you to laugh at it. And I do think if there's like a failing to this film, it's that as a horror comedy, the horror is not necessarily developed enough. You know, I would like to see a slightly better balance there, and I think that would probably raise this a little bit for me if there was like if this had a night, that's probably why they went to Landis, because he probably would have, obviously he could find that balance a little more cleverly. I don't think Aykroyd is ultimately that interested in ever kind of actually disturbing you or making you scared. He just wants to get to the laughs.
But Trev, do you think too, like, as much as they're like, oh, this isn't really a true horror movie, it's like, yeah, the adults wouldn't be scared of this, but like adults like loved Ghostbusters, but they weren't really scared of it either. Whereas like I think like a 9-year-old, 8-year-old, 7-year-old kid would be scared of Ghostbusters, and I think the same age child would probably be scared of this too. I mean, maybe,
and I think there's just something we said too for this era where there is this like kind of tendency to have these comedies that are dealing with like horror tropes, but are just kind of more comedic. You know, these two movies aren't very comparable to me, because the other one I'm about to say is one of my all-time favorite movies. But this is kind of like The Burbs, right? Where The Burbs is very much a horror setting, but never really scary. It has some very, very dark ideas, but it's just a total goofy comedy about what's happening in this cul-de-sac. And this in that same vein of saying this is basically taking what this could have been a horror movie and saying, okay, but let's just turn it into a pure comedy.
You're right.
You can easily rewrite this. You could remove the jokes and have this be, as we were just saying, this could be like a Rob Zombie horror film, no problem.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like, literally just pick the script up and hand it to Rob Zombie, and it's going to be completely different, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But you know, like, you know, obviously, whenever we talk about movies being kind of influenced by studio hands or whatever, Trev, it's usually a crippling and devastating effect. I mean, I don't think it really hurt this film, you know what I mean? Like, even like the PG-13 directive, again, we'll never be able to see or know what got cut out, you know, but yeah, it's just like, I don't know, like I think what killed this film and its prospects was just how fucking weird it is, you know what I mean? Like you. Well,
that's the thing, is like, you can't be too mad at Warner Brothers for this one, because they made this movie. The fact that they allowed this movie to be made and gave Dan Aykroyd this much leeway, and honestly, you know, so you and I talk about like what studios we like a lot, and I will say in general, even today, I still find Warner Brothers to be one of the better studios in terms of, they still today seem like they respect filmmakers a little bit more than other studios. You look at something like Denis Villeneuve, right? And he did Blade Runner 2049 for them, which was a gigantic bomb, right? Yep. And their response was, okay, but we still like the movie enough that we'll give you the money to go off and do Dune. Like, another studio wouldn't do that. I think they're like a little bit more willing to allow for failures if they feel like there's an actual artistic vision there. And that kind of goes back to this. Like, they made this weird, bizarre film that is so memorable because of how crazy it is.
Exactly. And like, you know, like Aykroyd talked about, like, you know, they trimmed a little to just get the editor and stuff to get the film pace wise. You know, there's like, he was talking about, there was some, like, mostly some bits at the end here, like the ending went on a little bit longer or whatever. But I mean, like they didn't, as far as, I mean, unless there is weirdness that was cut that we don't know about. I mean, this film has weirdness intact, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And like, I just don't think you're ever going to, like, I will say where Warner Brothers dropped the ball was the release date was horrible. I think we should mention that. So it came out like a week or so after Silence of the Lambs and Sleeping with the Enemy with Julia Roberts. And then I believe the same week this came out, King Ralph came out with the John Goodman, which was a pretty heavily marketed comedy. And I don't know what the marketing budget was for this, if they spent a lot or just kind of dumped it out there. But it's like, it was just a little too much competition and too weird of a movie to whatever, you know.
Mm-hmm. Look how cute Demi Moore looks in that hat, by the way, the FBI hat.
I know, like this is just like a weird thing, Trev, you know. But you know how dirty and scummy her and Chevy got, you know, running around and everything? That scene where they go to the cops and it shows them they're changed in, like, sweatsuits and stuff and they're cleaned up. Like, it's almost like a relief when I get to that scene. Like, oh, they're clean again, you know what I mean? Like, these are movie stars. They should be clean. They shouldn't be, you know, filled with dirt.
Now, I do like this twist. This is another thing I always liked as a kid. Like, this ultimate reveal here is nice. Because, like, one of my favorite things in horror, whether it's horror or comedy, is that idea of suddenly just being confronted where everyone is out to get you.
Yeah.
I just think that's just one of my favorite horror tropes, and I think it's played well here. I also just love this moment where he plays so innocent, opening the door. Something's just like this kind old man.
Yeah, the judge pretends like he doesn't know who they are, and you think, oh, it's because all the cops are there, and you know what I mean? Like, oh, he's trying to weasel out of everything he did. But no, obviously the twist here is all the cops know the judge. Everybody, like literally there's like 100 cops, National Guardsmen there, like they're all in on it.
Well, that's good too, because this actually... I love how we're talking about this as if it's like a real movie, right?
But yeah, you're right.
This twist justifies that moment, because you do have a moment where you're like, why would this many cops come? Like, why would the cops in National Guard come? I know they told a crazy story, but ultimately they say we're going to this house to apprehend, 4 people?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, you don't need this much of a force. But then when you find out that this is all like a swerve, then it's like, oh, okay, well, that's why they all came. They were coming to visit their buddy.
Yeah, the judge. Because, they're all connected to Pennsylvania. And then, again, Trev, I just miss when movies were allowed to be as theatrical and over the top as they wanted to be or whatever. And again, all of a sudden the underground coal fire is exploding, the ground is opening up, Demi Moore almost falls down into it. And it's completely if this, not that this film went over well when it came out, but especially if you try to do this now in a movie, people will be bitching online so much how unbelievable it is. And I like it back then when movies were allowed to be unbelievable, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Although the last part also with the twist, it does reveal that this movie was ahead of its time in terms of ACAB. All cops are bastards. So
exactly.
Maybe we need the remake today and have this be like a more political driven version of Nothing But Trouble.
Jordan Peele's Nothing But Trouble. Wouldn't that be funny too? How everybody's like, Get Out is a riff on the Stepford Wives or whatever. And what if Jordan Peele was like, no, Nothing But Trouble. That was the main.
You could easily see how you could change Nothing But Trouble into kind of a race based, social horror for sure.
Yeah.
But that's the thing in this movie. We, as you said, we learned that the judge is not racist at all. His favorite people in this movie are Digital Underground.
Yeah, He loves Digital Underground. Which I gotta say too, it's what do you think about that, Trev? Now that we've Get Out has happened and all that kind of thing, can you really play that paranoia in a film, in a race-based film? Because it's part of what makes a great paranoia film is that you're not sure if they really are out to get you or not. Whereas I feel like now, kind of with the race-based paranoia with kind of the moment we're in history, is no, you'll just automatically know that they are out to get them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a little tougher to have that be the surprise.
Yeah.
So here we get that quick the wrap up where we discover that John Candy has gone off with the Brazilian heirs, and he's now their head of security, and he's dating the sister. What do you think of that as a wrap up to that story?
I loved it because I was a little bothered watching this, Trev, because I'm like, what happened to them? I thought maybe maybe their deaths got cut out of the film and that was what originally happened. I'm like, oh no, they just had a happy ending. We just went half the movie without seeing what happened to them.
So this is my only thing, right? And I know I'm being silly because it's a silly movie, but you do watch the end and you think, well, they asked John Candy to help get their friends out, and now they're obviously still rich. They've gone back to Argentina. They are living with John Candy. It seems like they could definitely get involved and still help Chevy Chase and Demi Moore at this point. So the fact that it seems like they've now just abandoned their friends,
right,
and left them to whatever fate happened in that scene we just kind of went past, But maybe that was a sequel bait. Maybe here at the end, Chevy Chase and Demi Moore were going to try to escape to Brazil with them, and the judge in pursuit.
Yeah, because for a movie. I couldn't ever imagine this being... I could imagine this movie under the right circumstances being a modest little hit. But they almost, set you up for some weird sequel bait, don't they, Trev?
Yeah, that's right. I think it's just a funny ending. I'm not the biggest fan of the Looney Tunes man-shaped hole-in-the-wall gag at the end. I don't think you need that. I think it would have worked just as well if you just had Chevy Chase fall off the couch. I think that's probably the better place to end it.
Right.
But I do like this ending. I like the the notion of, and again, it's not the dumbest screenplay in the world. It brings back the fact that he did go through at the wedding, so he is married to her. So he says, we're going to my son-in-law's place, and it's like, oh yeah, it's, legally he's discovers that he's kind of maybe trapped in that. So
I had to look up the cast listing because I couldn't tell because he's watching this TV news report and they actually show it through the TV, and so it's not the best quality. I couldn't tell if the reporter was Courtney Cox or not. Turns out
I had that same thought. Yeah, she definitely looks like Courtney Cox. Oh, there's the return of the penis nose.
Yeah. When they show the judge on the news report, he has the penis nose again, and he holds up Chevy Chase's. I think that was the best horror moment, right? When they go in the attic and they see the millions of driver's license up there of all the people the judge has killed. I think that was the scariest part to me. And then we have like so who ripped off who? I know technically Coming to America came out first, but who ripped off playing 1 billion characters under heavy makeup? Dan Aykroyd or Eddie Murphy?
I feel like today we see it as more, we understand it's more of like an Eddie Murphy thing.
Yeah.
But again, I think that's just coming off of SNL. I think people are like willing to do that. I think we need more of that. I like that idea of a single person playing multiple characters in a film.
Exactly.
You kind of wish, like, this isn't really, it's not really Chevy Chase's thing, but it seems like because Dan Aykroyd and John Candy doing this, you almost kind of wish Chevy Chase had like one more character just to complete the little trifecta there.
Right. Yeah, and we kind of alluded to it, but yeah, John Candy didn't want to play the female character, and apparently a nice gag was when he would walk around dressed as the female character in the crew, just to be funny, he would catcall him and stuff. And he would say, "Geez, it's kind of funny what I'm willing to do for $1 million." So, but yeah, like I mean, I know, you know, this show is about, you know, kind of older films, whether they were successful or not, you know, lost gems or whatever. And I gotta say, this movie being a by the way, Trev, I had no idea this was a box office bomb at the time, because like, you know, everybody in my age group was excited to see it, and you know, everybody who didn't see it theatrically saw it.
I think it's
video.
really tough for our generation to understand which movies were bombs as you get older, because of that fact that these movies we grew up with, like this or like Big Trouble in Little China, The Thing, that kind of like were immediately resurrected on cable. I think we just assume like, well, those are successful movies, right? And you go back and find what's even more surprising is seeing how some of them were like unsuccessful at the box office and critics hated them. You know, and you're just like, what? You know, so that's, I can never kind of gauge like what were successes and what weren't. Yeah,
and like I just wish this would have been a hit, just in terms of like, even though he kind of was, you know, back end whatever force into directing it, I would have liked to seen more Dan Aykroyd creations.
Yeah, if nothing else, this definitely makes you want more unfiltered Dan Aykroyd movies. Because I think he's somebody who, because his ideas are so extreme, a lot of stuff he ended up working on was him kind of having to respond more to studio notes and downplaying. It's obviously, even Ghostbusters is like a compromised version of his vision. And as I said, on that one, I'm glad. So I look at this way and I go, I wish this had set off like maybe 3 or 4 more, like just weird beard, complete Dan Aykroyd, unfiltered Dan Aykroyd on screen.
And I gotta say too, it's like the production value is insane in this film. The one thing that made this movie just as memorable as like all the weird characters or whatever was just the star power that's in it. I mean, it's like Demi Moore. It's like, you know what I mean? It's like you expect Chevy and Aykroyd and John Candy, but like the fact that they got unless I would say she was probably right up there, if not tied with at the time, is with Julia Roberts as being the biggest female movie star at the time, you know. So it's just a nice little oddity, which is weird to say, a nice little oddity for a $40 million movie, but like, yeah. I guess we should say too, the last little bit of trivia I had, and I saw it in the credits, was I don't know if you know this, Trev, but a lot of the makeup was done by David Miller, who created Freddy Krueger in the original Nightmare on Elm Street. So, no.
Also in the credits was a special thanks to John Hughes.
Yep.
Who I know was like one of the directors who was, I think he was wasn't he like actually maybe a little interested in doing it?
Yeah, I want to say, I'm blanking. I can't remember what, there was some project he was in the middle of and he couldn't do it. So, yeah. And I can't remember.
I think he gave Aykroyd some notes on the script, I believe.
And I remember there was some talk too of somebody. I can't remember if they talked to De Palma or so, but there was like somebody that they were, or maybe an actor or somebody they were trying to get that was involved with Bonfire of the Vanities. And like Bonfire of the Vanities, I finally watched about 2 or 3 years ago on cable. Again, for like not the worst movie in the world. It's a over the top farce. It's like, if you know what the movie is, like, you know.
I can't remember if I heard it on this disc in the bonus features or if it was somewhere else where they said that maybe one of the reasons the studio was like kind of not paying that much attention to this was because at the time they were more concerned with Bonfire of the Vanities.
Yeah, maybe that's what it was.
That was like blowing up in their face, and then so they they were sending all their like damage control people to that set, and Dan Aykroyd just had kind of free reign to do whatever he wanted over here.
Yeah, and Chevy Chase on the interview, he talks about how Dan Aykroyd was a unorthodox director. I mean, he kept like if he wanted to talk to you about the scene, he would be like, hey, let's jump in the car, ride down the road, let's talk about this scene. Is definitely by all accounts a very enjoyable shooting experience.
So what do you think? You want a Nothing But Trouble remake, or you want a legacy sequel where we bring back Chevy Chase, reveal that he's the same character, older, thinks he's gotten away, but finds out the judge is actually still alive. Judge is like 100 and what is it, 130 now? Or
yeah, not even close, dude. Legacy sequel, a remake would almost be borderline blasphemy. Again, the one exception, I will gladly watch Rob Zombie's Nothing But Trouble. but yeah, like I would love a legacy sequel. I would actually really love to see Demi back as well. Like I keep up with her on social media and stuff, but like I know she does act a lot of smaller movies, whatever. Still, but like I would love to see her in like kind of.
She just a couple years ago did a horror comedy called. I think it was like Corporate Animals. Did you see that? Because I've heard like decent stuff about it. I never got around to watching it.
I've heard.
Yeah, it's about like a business people on like one of those like corporate retreats, and then they start getting killed off one by one. It's like kind of a slasher film. Yeah. Yeah,
I heard of it, and I was surprised to see her in the cast list, but I had no idea really even what type of film it was. Yeah, actually, I'll give that a shot. Yeah, I miss her.
Yeah, she's great.
Yeah, I don't know. Again, it was obviously good for her career at the time, but like I almost think like I don't know, like it was. She was one of those people. Her career actually, it seemed like, got damaged the more famous she got, because it felt like the pressure was there for her to keep doing bigger. So she was doing these giant films like G.I. Jane and Striptease and stuff that were like all about her being the giant star of the film more than like, there were star vehicles. I guess that's what you would call them, because we don't really have that type of film anymore, but star vehicles. Whereas like, I just thought she was just, and maybe that was the best material she had offered to her at the time, but like, I don't know, like, I just think she was a lot more of a chameleon than people gave her credit for.
It's funny because I was just thinking about what you said earlier about how like Hollywood kind of cast them off at a certain age.
Yeah.
And I referenced this earlier, and it shows how like we too often even, I think, buy into like what Hollywood trains us to accept and believe.
Yeah.
And the ultimate example of that is, when I was younger, I remember Charlie's Angels Full Throttle being kind of a comeback film for her.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely was guilty at the time of going to see that movie and so this is like a big comeback and being like, oh man, I can't believe, look how she looks incredible. She still looks great.
Yeah.
And then looking up and realizing she was 41 in that movie.
Oh yeah.
It's how old I am now. It's like, oh, I can't believe old Demi Moore is still hot. Well, of course she's hot at 41. It's just like, but that thing is like, at that point she'd been off the scene, and that was like, the old seasoned hand. But yeah, I mean, that's just Hollywood sexism even filtering into my brain, unfortunately.
You know what's, and this is a ridiculous term to use for both these people, but like, was maybe a movie that didn't quite stick the landing, but was interesting in concept and casting, was the kind of, and again, it's because both of them were kind of, their careers were a little washed at the time, but that movie, Mr. Brooks, with...
I love that movie. I like that movie a lot.
Yeah, with Costner as the serial killer and Demi as the cop trying to get him, and like that was like that casting of those two people, like... It's a cool movie, but I don't think it really would, like, that was a little bit of a magical thing of you had two kind of, 90s stars at the beginning of the 2000s or whatever, whenever that film came out. And, like, I think that movie, what was really special about that movie was the casting. I won't say the casting was as magical for Dane Cook in it, but...
Yeah. that was like definitely at that time where you felt like, oh, we got to get him to get the kids in to see this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a movie that we will one day be covering on Failure to Franchise, because I'm not sure if you're aware, that was meant to be the beginning of, there was a planned Mr. Brooks trilogy.
No, I did not know that. Was it?
If you remember the way that film ends, it like sets up the next chapter.
Yeah.
And ultimately, it's meant to be this like story of his daughter and what's happening with her, and becoming this kind of battle between him and his daughter. But yeah, the screenwriters talked about how they had the next two planned, and Kevin Costner and Danielle Panabaker were both down to do it, but the movie did not take off.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember it even felt kind of like a B release when it came out. Like, I mean, I saw it right when it came out, but
That was one of those ones that came out at that time where like Kevin Costner was like really like people
Iffy.
just didn't care about him anymore, you know. And I remember like that was one of those defensive like, no, he's still awesome. So you go see Mr. Brooks. Like this is going to be the start of like a big comeback for him. He's willing to play like bigger like villains now. Because I always think of that, and then I'm not even sure. I don't think these are too close in time, but I'm a huge defender and lover of 3,000 Miles to Graceland.
Oh, are you kidding?
Which I also like. Think Kevin Costner is just fantastic in that. I like when Kevin Costner plays bad guys. I think he does it really well. Or even like a subtle bad guy, like something like not that he's the villain, but one of my favorite Clint Eastwood movies, A Perfect World. I think.
Oh, I love A Perfect World. I love it. I actually think that's like because Eastwood directed that one, right?
Yeah. That's like one of his unsung masterpieces.
Yeah, I think that's actually, you know, I mean, obviously there's probably a few I haven't seen over the years, or probably earlier in his career, but I think that's the best directed movie Clint Eastwood has directed. But yeah, I always wondered if I could ever rope anybody into doing a show of 3,000 Miles of Graceland. So I think I found the person now.
Yeah, you just found your guy. Let's do that for sure.
Coming 2022, people, mark your calendars. So Trev, this episode is going out in a few weeks, probably beginning in December. And this is probably the because I got some other episodes banked. This might be your last appearance in the year of our Lord 2021. Was there any messages or just any thing you wanted to relate to our listeners?
No, just if you made it through another year, congrats. It's not easy anymore, but obviously to the listeners, thanks for sticking with this show. Thanks for having me back quite frequently.
Well, thank you.
Definitely looking forward to more. We've already got some more stuff planned.
Yeah.
But obviously for me, this in terms of if we're wrapping up here, if you have anything else to say, sometimes you like to ask me other questions near the end.
Yeah.
But,
we don't have to wrap up. This is a fairly short movie.
I will say like 2021 in terms of I'm glad that this year did feel like movies actually came back. That was nice to see. I've been going back to the theater, and it's just been nice to be forming an end of the year movie list already, a tentative one, and it feels like a real list, not the bullshit fake one I had last year of all streaming releases and nothing else. So.
Yeah, for me, earlier, because like where I live, theaters were closed for quite a while. So in the last year, that whole HBO Max thing pretty much saved the year of quote unquote new movies for me. You know what I mean? Because pretty much all 2020, I had no choice but just to watch old stuff, and that was fun for a few months, I gotta admit. But it was nice to have new movies, star movies, whatever. My only real question for you is, unless you did a letterbox that I missed, like where you at on the new version of Dune?
I did do a letterbox for it. That's actually my favorite movie of the year right now.
Awesome.
Yeah, I loved it, and I'm very aware, for me at least, that I'm coming to this as a huge Dune super fan.
Yeah,
I love it. It's one of my favorite books of all time. I've read Dune the book at least 4 times.
Dang.
And I've read the rest of the series at least. I mean, I read the rest of the series once, but I'm actually in the middle of a reread of it now. In recent years, I've come around on the Lynch one to where now I don't think it's a great movie, but I think it's a very interesting failure, and so I think it's still an important part of his filmography, and I do like revisiting it. I own and enjoy both the Sci-Fi Channel miniseries, so it's a movie I was already excited for. I'm a Villeneuve fan in general. And I just thought it was fantastic, and even I have small quibbles with it, only coming from my familiarity with the book. But to me, it's interesting to talk to people who have watched it and have quite enjoyed it not knowing the book, because I do think it's, to me, it feels like a movie that was very much designed for fans of the book, because he does not explain a lot of stuff that I wouldn't say it's not, obviously it's not necessary to know because it's attracting other audiences, but I was surprised at how many answers he does not give that I can watch and understand, and he just doesn't even bother getting into. Right. So it's even over the span of 2 movies, he still couldn't get into everything. But I still had performances were fantastic, incredible sound design, just a beautiful movie to look at. Yeah, I'm all in on it. I loved it. I'm very, very happy and excited that he got the green light for part 2. Oh
yeah, dude, that's everything. Because kind of my experience with it was I always had, I only saw the David Lynch Dune 2 or 3 times over the years, and it wasn't like a movie I loved as a kid, but it was another one that I remembered a lot as a kid, just because I went in expecting Star Wars, because this was a film that had toys and everything, and it was a very weird, surreal experience, but I liked it a lot. Like for years, I always remembered the sandworms and stuff. And I own the film on HD DVD. I watched a couple times on that, and then I just got the Arrow release. I kind of knew I was setting myself up for whatever, but I was like, the new Dune is here, and I got that release just a couple weeks before it came out, and I was like, fuck it, I'm going to watch the David Lynch one and then watch this one, and if the new one suffers in comparison or vice versa, that it will be what it is. Both movies exist, can't get around it. So I watched the Lynch one. Still, I probably love it now more than ever. I just love how theatrical and weird it is, and what I was surprised when I was watching the new one, I really the first hour. I was surprised how much the first hour of the Lynch version and the new version are very similar. They're almost they pick almost exactly the same scenes to adapt. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they are the signature scenes. I think the Lynch one suffers from it's got the right pacing for the first hour.
Yeah.
And then suddenly he goes off the rails and cramming too much of the end. And I think that's why it was important for Villeneuve to give that its own movie instead.
And I never read the book, so the whole criticism that the Lynch version was a bad adaptation, so to speak, I was like, I don't care about that. I'm not comparing it to the book because I never read the book. But yeah, when I rewatched the Lynch version, I was like, damn, the movie's just now getting good, and then they cram the whole second half of the movie into a 20-minute montage in the Lynch version, and I was like, so to me, it's the new one's kind of a nice companion piece in terms of once the new version, once you got past that first hour and it kind of started deviating and they're doing slightly different scenes or slightly different takes on scenes, I was kind of meh on the first hour of the new one, and then the final 90 minutes I was really into it. I'm and then I thought I know some people complain oh, it doesn't have an ending. I thought that Villeneuve picked the perfect moment to stop the film.
That's the thing. So again, this is where it comes from. I always have to consider do I just feel this way because of my familiarity with the book?
Yeah.
And all I would say is to anyone who feels that's a weird ending spot or not the appropriate ending, just wait, because thematically, the idea of ending on Paul's first the first time he kills someone, and what that does to him as a person, that's actually a pretty appropriate thematic ending for that film,
right?
Because this is very much a story about what happens to Paul as a person, and and this is why I really hope I don't know. I don't foresee this necessarily, but I know Villeneuve's plan is he would like to make the third film as well to adapt the second book, Dune Messiah, which kind of culminates the story of Paul. And I would love for them to get to do that. Just if nothing else, I don't want to get into too much of spoiler territory here, but I would love to watch a mainstream audience grapple with what becomes of our hero in the future installments. I'm not sure how much of that go. But,
no, I don't.
Yeah, so I won't say too much, but I hope he does get to do that, even if I don't necessarily think it will happen.
But yeah, I mean, I was all about it. The first kind of hour of the new version, I was kind of I missed the color, especially because everybody was oh, the new version is a visual masterpiece and all that, and I get why people are saying that, but I was I missed a lot of the color and a lot of the weirdness. But that second half, I felt I don't know, it was probably just a me personally thing. The second half of the new one, I was it was really clicking to me. I was getting drawn in. I was oh man, and by the time I watched the movie, because I didn't watch the movie opening weekend, I watched it this week or whatever, I knew part 2 was coming. I was so happy. But even if for whatever reason part 2 wasn't coming, Trev, I would be happy. It ending, I was oh, that's a perfect ending, or at least a place to leave off for now. I thought.
Yeah, it's weird because I've seen even our buddy Jelly watched it, and he was talking about how he had a disconnect from it because he felt it wasn't a complete story, and I kind of felt I had to disagree. I think even it's a cliffhanger, of course. It is the first installment, but I think there is a full story told in this movie about the collapse of a family, the downfall of a great family and being accepted into a new society and what you have to do that. There is a 3-act structure to this film, and it works as its own piece, and there's just more to come. So yeah, I love it.
Yeah, I thought so too. I wish we could have got some more. I was surprised how much I like Momoa in it. Not that I don't like Jason Momoa.
Would you say? I think that was his best character yet, right? That
was
the best Momoa.
I think so. I wish Brolin had more scenes, but I mean, I know why he didn't. You know what I mean? But yeah, like I gotta say too, like this is just a personal taste of mine. It's like Kyle MacLachlan was one of my favorite actors in the '80s because I loved him in Blue Velvet and The Hidden, and Dune was the first thing I ever saw him in. So to me, like I always loved him as Paul Atreides. And then Chalamet is kind of like my modern Wonder Boy, like whereas like I shrug off a lot of the new young guys like Tom Holland, they don't do much for me. Like Chalamet is like right up my alley. So like the only person that, in my opinion, modern day could have stepped into the Atreides role is him, and I just look forward to like seeing him do more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know if you're a Chalamet guy. Just the other night, I don't know if I don't know where you fall on Wes Anderson, but I just saw.
I love
French
Wes
Dispatch.
Anderson.
Okay,
oh yeah, I'm dying to see it. Yeah,
and you're definitely gonna like Chalamet in that.
Yeah,
that's I'll tell you what, man. That's already like. That's really up there for me in Wes Anderson. It's probably in my like top 3 of his. I really really loved it.
Yeah, it's hard for me to like do a Wes Anderson ranking because like some of his movies I've seen 5 times, and there's 3 that I've only seen once. I have a copy of it, but what is it, the Grand Budapest Hotel? Or no, yeah, Grand Budapest. I love that in the theater, but I've only seen it once. Isle of Dogs, I've only seen it once, but I mean, you know me, I love stop motion. And then I'm blanking on the name. Oh, Darjeeling Limited. I only saw it once, and I was a little...
That's the one I'm not super into.
See, I was a little cool on it when I saw it theatrically, but I was the same way for some reason with Royal Tenenbaums. I was very cool on Royal Tenenbaums the first time I saw it, and then it just grew on me. My favorite Wes Anderson movie, just off the top of my head, is Bottle Rocket, believe it or not.
Yeah, I feel that too. Like I bring that up sometimes. People think I'm like doing that to be contrarian or like, but it's just like
so
no,
good.
That's just a really good, tight, simple movie.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to see him starting to develop that style.
Like in terms of the, his bigger budget, more fantastical, more quirky, whatever. Like I really like Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou, but
yeah, that's another one where I'm more cool on that than other people. I like it, but I think there was like a little, maybe some of the quirkiness of that one didn't really hit for me in the same way, particularly like the animated fish and everything. But also like for me, and I'm sure that you feel this too, because you and I are like, we always talk about how we're kind of close in age and it's a lot of the same experiences. But Bottle Rocket is also this like nostalgic thing of that. It comes from that era of like a lot of excitement about independent film. Mm-hmm. And like when IFC was actually the independent film channel and we were getting all these like cool up and coming filmmakers. And I remember Bottle Rocket being one of those movies of seeing and just that feeling of like exhilarating of like, oh, like this is like a clear new talent. Like I can't wait to see what he does next. And the fact that he's paid that off and you've actually seen this incredible kind of career come out of that. But that was a movie that I remember being a big advocate for that movie when I first saw it, telling people, you got to see this little movie. And they're like, what? Who cares? I'm like, and that back then he had to say, well, no, but James Caan is in it. So there's a star, yeah.
Dude, I love Bottle Rocket so much. And it was such an agonizing whatever till I finally saw it. So it was like one of those movies because it was put out by Sony, but it was like a whatever offering, lower or whatever priority offering. So it was like one of those movies, like I saw the trailer for like not forever, but I saw the trailer for a good 2 or 3 months in front of a bunch of movies. I was like, oh, I want to see this movie. And then I start reading about it in film magazines and stuff. And then like the poster was always up in my local theater, and it was one of those fucking things when it came out. Like I don't know if it didn't perform good enough or what, but it didn't play Cincinnati theatrically that I know of at all.
Yeah, I didn't see the theater either. I had to rent it, but I remember the way I found out about it was when it was reviewed on Siskel and Ebert.
Yeah,
and obviously they both loved it. I still remember they showed like the little the clip of Owen Wilson riding up in the yellow jumpsuit and everything, and him just talking about like what a great like little crime caper this is. And this is when I was watching their show like every weekend, and again, you were finding out about these like cool little movies, and that was one that I had on my radar. And same thing, I was like, man, I want to go see this. Why is this not playing around me? And had to wait for it to hit video.
Yeah, and like I remember we just got DirecTV, and it was like Christmas break, and it was like because we just signed up, they gave us like 3 coupons to do pay-per-view movies. I only ended up using one out of the 3, but it was Bottle Rocket was on pay-per-view, and I was like, oh, I gotta get. And I remember watching it by myself, like on a Sunday afternoon, like all by myself, and like I fell in love with it. And I was just like, I've seen it like probably 20, 30 times. My fucking favorite thing is at the end when like the caper goes wrong and like Owen Wilson is kind of like taking the fall. He decides he's going to take the fall for it. I love it when like they're getting away and they're like, oh, you got to come with us. He's like, no. He's like, they'll never catch me because I'm fucking innocent. And he runs away. He fucking quotes Guns N' Roses and he runs away and gets arrested. Like, I don't know. Like, see, that's another thing too is like, because I feel like most people kind of you know, and it's understandable because his second film Rushmore, and I went to see that when it came out and stuff. But like Rushmore was a wide release through Disney and stuff. So I get people who fell in love with his quirkier shit later, and then they go back to Bottle Rocket, and to them it's not really like Wes Anderson, or it's not really that high stakes or interesting or artistic or whatever. But to me, like I fucking wish he'd do another movie more like Bottle Rocket. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it surprised me, and I still don't get this. I still get into debates with people about this. These like idiots who, every time a new Wes Anderson movie comes out, they're just like, oh, here's that again. It's like,
yeah,
dude, it's not like this guy's cranking out a movie a year, you know, and like in like what, almost 25 years of filmmaking now, he's made like 9 movies.
Yeah.
And I think like, yeah, he has a distinctive style. That's cool, right? If you either like it or you don't, but you don't have to like shit on it every time.
Dude, like,
I'm surprised that because people kind of mock how all his films look the same now, that you don't see more of those people at least going back to Bottle Rocket and being like, well, that's the one we like, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, dude. I mean, he like Woody Allen kind of became more of a chameleon in like the late '90s, early 2000s. But for the '70s and '80s, you knew a fucking Woody Allen movie when you saw it. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
there's no problem. Like that's the thing. Is like Wes Anderson has developed this interesting style, and it works every time. Essentially, you know, some of them are better than others, but I don't know. Why complain about that? Like, you don't complain when a painter does the same kind of painting over and over, you know?
And and like if what he does sucks so bad, how come so many people like were trying to copy his shit for so long? You know, like even Ryan, like we were talking one time. I actually liked the film, but like Brothers Bloom, Ryan Johnson, like that's clearly a Wes Anderson, you know, homage kind of thing. But yeah, I figured you would like Dune, Like where like, because I know you like Blade Runner as well, but like where are you just overall on Villeneuve? Or like are you bowing down to the master of Kino? Like, do you think he's overrated, underrated, correctly rated? What do you think?
I think he's correctly rated. I will say, to me, I think Denis Villeneuve is the filmmaker that a lot of people think Christopher Nolan is.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I think Villeneuve is like the better version of Nolan. The if you're talking about like heady, intelligent blockbuster filmmaking, I'm way more interested in like what he's doing than what Nolan is doing nowadays.
Well, I feel like more people kind of got on Villeneuve's nuts because of Blade Runner, and I totally understand why. I mean, it was a movie that like in a weird way was almost kind of like anticipated for 30 years, but like like my top 3 of his films, and I didn't see his like very early low budget Canadian film, but like my top 3 list of his films, I think my favorite one is probably Sicario.
Yeah, Sicario's great.
Yeah, I love Sicario. And then like it was just a movie I just went to like go see just to go see. But I actually was very, very impressed with Prisoners.
Have you seen Enemy?
Yeah, I like Enemy a lot.
Yeah.
I forgot what my third one I was going to say, but it's like another one of his that... Oh, Arrival. I really like Arrival. Actually, on early Black Friday deals, I just ordered a copy, and I'm actually looking forward to rewatching it.
Well, and that's what I like about him, too, is like, so you and I, in the course of this show and other conversations, we've had the opportunity to talk about a lot of filmmakers who will do some genre stuff and then be like, they don't want to get stuck in genre. And I'm very taken with all these recent interviews I've read with Villeneuve where he flat out says, I want to be a sci-fi filmmaker. Like everything I was doing up till Arrival was me just getting the clout and proving I could work with these budgets to where they would give me the budgets. And he's like, yeah, that's what, now I did Arrival, I did Blade Runner, Dune. It's like, this is the genre I've always wanted to work in. Yeah. That's pretty cool because you see a lot of filmmakers be like, well, I'll make a sci-fi film, but then I want to make sure I go back to drama. And I love that Villeneuve was just like, no, I want to make big budget sci-fi. Like, so I love him even more for just committing to that and being like, yeah, every other thing I did was just a step along the way to get to that necessarily.
Yeah, like I was really kind of disappointed, and like I don't know if it was a thing of like it was made before or after other movies or what, but to me he was already a name by the time Enemy got made, and like Enemy got a really fucked up like non-release.
Yeah.
Like I could be wrong about this, but I swear to God, Enemy to this day is still only released on DVD even. I could be wrong.
Yeah, you
might
be right. It's too bad. That's a movie you would love to see, like with the mainstream audience, just to get to that last moment and just see what the theater reaction is to that.
Yeah. I just thought the whole without spoiling too much, I just thought the whole premise of the film and the way it played out. And I'm kind of a big whatever Gyllenhaal. Like Gyllenhaal's another one. If Villeneuve would have made Dune 10, 15 years earlier, I would have been all for Gyllenhaal doing it. But
we're not supposed to like Gyllenhaal anymore though, because he broke up with Taylor Swift 10 years ago.
Yeah, what's some weird... I keep seeing weird headlines about them dating, like, years ago, and, like, A, I never knew they dated, but B, it's like, who gives a fuck? Like, hasn't...
Well,
I mean...
so there's this thing now where, not to... Well, I talk about tangent in this podcast.
Yeah.
But, so
well, it's the end of the year. Let's do it.
so Taylor Swift is doing the whole thing now where she's re-releasing new recordings of our old albums
Right.
to get, like, the rights to them back.
To get the money back, yeah.
Well, because, that guy who, like, was terrible to her, he owns the original albums, essentially. Yeah. So she is re-recording them so that now fans can buy those ones instead. Mm-hmm. And she's going in and expanding some of the songs. And so because it's a re-release of Red, which is a previous album from her, people are kind of being reintroduced to the songs she wrote about their brief relationship. And so it's like this new generation of Taylor Swift fans are suddenly like looking at him as the devil again because they dated for 3 months and it didn't go very well. I don't know. It's
I mean,
it's pretty silly. But.
Yeah, I mean, as long as, like, whatever, like, as long as he didn't do anything of a criminal nature to her. Okay, I'm pleasantly wrong. Enemy is on Blu-ray. Just for some reason, when I rented it from Netflix, it wasn't. But unless something criminal happened between the two, like, who cares? I mean, like, nothing against her. I mean, it's not any. But I mean, didn't she date a lot of other famous people and it didn't work out? I mean,
yeah, it's just some relationships don't work.
Yeah, I don't know. That's fucking weird. But you know what? I mean, obviously not trying not to go down a tangent here, but like, yeah, like I feel like even the early days of the internet, Trev, like when there was people on movie messenger boards and stuff, like I feel like we've gotten to this weird shift of social media, I guess, shit. Whereas it used to be we would be online to talk about the movies, the music, the TV, the books, the whatever that we cared about, and like now people just obsess on like the people's personal lives, and I'm like, I don't even get how you make those strong judgments. I mean, obviously, if it's like something terrible comes out about somebody, you know what I mean? But like, other than that, like, I don't get how people like try to read into these people's personal lives when we don't know like what. I mean, it's their personal life. We don't know what's going on,
Yeah, I agree.
It's just weird. It's weird. Well, I want to thank you for bringing this film to the table, and I want to also thank you too, because I was late to the party because I was actually off for the second half of October. I was just picking up again. I was enjoying the I'm sorry, what was it called? The Halloween episode of the Days of Future podcast.
Our Halloween Spooktacular.
Yeah, like I thought we, because like I don't know if you know this, Trev, but when you're not here, pretty much this is a podcast that's diverted about finding excuses to talk about semen in films. But I thought we went into some weird kind of comedic tangents or non-comedic tangents, however you want to look at it. You and Joe, man, Halloween is a reason for you guys to let loose.
Yeah, it's always an interesting episode because we want to do a Halloween special, but we don't really know what that means for that podcast. So
right,
it's usually a somewhat crazy one for us.
Yeah. I like the part where it got kind of like contentious because you were trying to give the history of pumpkins and Joe didn't have the patience for it. And then his wife came in, and that was interesting because his wife is a woman who doesn't like other women. I found that interesting. But at least you guys got the episode off to a fun start with the spooky, scary song.
Yeah, of course. We knew we had to, especially after talking to you, I told Joe, like, we can't let the listeners down. We got to have Werewolf Bar Mitzvah in there.
Exactly. So it'll probably, like that was the last episode, I think, that you guys posted. Do you have anything else coming up?
We are trying to figure out what the next thing will be. We've both been kind of busy, but we never promised that we're not the most regularly released show.
Yeah.
But we try to find interesting things to talk about. We will probably be doing an episode soon to talk about just our speculation on what that newly announced X-Men 97 cartoon will be like as they're bringing back the animated series. And we're both excited about it. Obviously, when that show starts running, we'll be reviewing it, but we want to talk about a little bit what do we think it means to do that, because it's obviously a big announcement because this is kind of Disney's first big play with X-Men as a property since taking over. So
yeah, I'm curious how much modern Disney is going to be shoved into that, if it will still feel authentic to the time period or not. But
yeah.
But I mean, everybody loved X-Men cartoon in the 90s, so
Yeah, and I have conflicted thoughts about it in general. Like, I think it's really cool they're doing it. I like the idea, and I get the idea. There's also a part of me, and we've talked about this on the show quite frequently. There's a part of me frustrated that still, to most people, that's the only version of X-Men that they know, and they think that is the X-Men. It's just that 97 team, and so I think this show's not going to help that. There's so many eras of X-Men post 97 or post the 90s that I think you could also make a cartoon out of and introduce people to new characters and things. So I don't know. I'm conflicted on it. I'm excited, but I'm also tentatively like, is this just going to cause the same problem where, like, even say when you go to Target or Kohl's, right, to get like your graphic tees, the only X-Men shirts are the team from the '90s. There's so many permutations of them since then.
Trust me, that those are the ones I own.
Yeah.
But not to drag this out too long, whatever. Not to go on a tangent, but Marvel is in full on Phase 4. Like they are dragging the dregs of whatever in terms of characters. And they kind of announced more of the future. Are you surprised that there's still no X-Men on the horizon? Like,
I think they're just having a hard time figuring out what. Like, I mean, obviously it's going to be a crucial turning point for them. I think when you're looking at what's coming up, you understand how important the X-Men are for them. Yeah. Especially with this kind of like muted reaction to Eternals, which I still have not even seen. I think that's kind of telling because like I'm definitely an MCU guy, and it's like I can't even get the motivation to go to the theater to check it out. At this point, I'm just like, no, I'll just wait for 2 months when it comes on Disney Plus. I'll check it out.
That's where I'm at, and I mean, I gotta say that's a great strategy for me personally because. I whatever. I haven't been too high on Marvel stuff for a while now, their TV and movies, and it's I watched Black Widow and then Shang-Chi on Disney Plus, which by the way, we've been saying it wrong for years, Trev. It's Shang-Chi.
I know, yeah, Shang-Chi, yeah.
Not Shang-Chi. But anyway, I was watching those movies on streaming, it actually I probably ended up liking them more because the expectations were gone, if you know what I mean.
I mean, I did like both of them. This is apparently the minority view, but I liked Black Widow quite a bit. I know, I've seen a lot of people rank that really low in their MCU rankings, and I thought that was a really effective, just kind of solo adventure film for her. But yeah, I liked them fine. Just I don't know, there's something about Eternals where it just doesn't grab me, and the TV stuff, I've liked most of it. I didn't really like Falcon Winter Soldier too much, but
I didn't either. I got one episode left of it.
I liked Loki. But then it's I saw that graphic of 12 new shows next year or whatever.
And it's what is all this shit? Yeah.
This is the problem is you can't get excited. I wish they would just understand. I guess, I mean, obviously we do have the Yahoos on YouTube who just scream about everything. But for me as a normal person, I can't get excited about any one thing when you're telling me about 12 new things coming out of the pipeline. It's just too much. It feels overwhelming. And I feel even though I probably will watch most of those, when you tell me about it at once, I'm like, ugh, I gotta watch all this stuff next year too. It's just at this. So yeah, I'm kind of feeling the same way with you with MCU, where I'll never completely turn on it, but it's not one of my highest moments right now.
Yeah, and you know me, I'm not going to judge or prejudge your movie based on whether I know the characters or not. By all means, empty the closets of MCU characters. Bring up all the, but definitely Phase 5. Whenever that kind of goes in the swing, I was like. We need either Fantastic Four or X-Men, already. Sure. I'm all for the minor characters getting kind of, modernized and gussied up and everything, but I'll be honest, I'm sick of the characters I know being pushed to streaming only, never being in movies again, and then the movies being just all basically lesser characters, you know what I mean? So
yeah,
whatever.
Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting time for them. I think X-Men will be, if they can figure it out, X-Men will be their saving grace.
Yeah.
But if they mess it up, then they'll fall on their face. But the nice thing about X-Men is it doesn't give them one property; it gives them multiple properties, and I hope that's what they understand. You can have X-Men, you can have X-Force, you can have X-Factor, you can have multiple TV shows. So, yeah, that's what I like to see. You could also, of course, do the solo films. I'm sure their Wolverine will get a movie. So we'll see.
I heard somebody say something the other day, and I kind of agree with it. Even I always knew Phase 4 was going to be a rebuilding phase, introducing new things, and I don't have a problem with that at all. But it's you need something big soon, because for a lot of people, Endgame was the perfect send-off for the MCU, and I think a lot of people are fine just leaving it at that. I feel like they need to kind of wow people again.
I'll tell you what MCU's strategic mistake is right now, I think. Is that they have given no indication of what the next big thing they're building to is. Right? So they've introduced Kang the Conqueror, but they haven't made it clear, is he meant to be, because they've said he's the next big bad Marvel, but what does that mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Is that building to another Avengers film with him, or just appearing on a bunch of the TV shows? If you at least told us what I hate to use the word endgame because it has a different context now.
Yeah.
But if you at least told us what you're trying to aim at the end of Phase 4 or at the end of Phase 5, we would at least know where you're heading. And that's the thing, is it feels more directionless right now.
I agree.
It feels. Especially with Chadwick Boseman's unfortunate passing,
Yeah,
that's sad. In our heads we were like, oh well, he's going to be the new leader of the Avengers. That makes sense. But now that's out of play. So I don't even know what the next Avengers movie looks like. And we don't know when it's coming. So yeah, I just don't know. I don't know what their ultimate overall plan is. It just seems like a lot of independent properties suddenly. Mm-hmm. And that's why it's harder to be excited, because at least with the previous phases, we always knew we were building to the next Avengers film.
I agree 1,000%. Like, I was kind of slogging through the TV shows, and especially Shang-Chi was a nice little, nothing groundbreaking, but it was a nice little bright spot. And I'm like, okay, like, let's get some momentum. It's just a momentum problem. That's all it is. It's not that the content's bad, not that it's shitty, not that you want to stop watching. It's just a momentum problem. And it's funny, too, because, like, with all this Spider-Man hoo-ha, it's just like, I don't know. That Spider-Man movie's either going to go over huge or it's going to be the biggest backfire of all time.
I'll tell you what, I do think... I don't think they should have released that newest trailer. I don't know if you watched it.
I did, yeah.
Oh, boy. That is... the CGI is just so bad in that.
Yes, it is. It is.
You already had people... Everyone was going to see this movie anyways. Now, why'd you put a bad taste in our mouths with this trailer?
Well, yeah. It is, and I got to say, too, it's like... If the Spider-Mens are in it, show me the Spider-Mens now. Like, I'm not about being teased and cajoled. Just let me know. Like, are we getting a movie of Spider-Mens or not? That's all I want to know.
It's so dumb. They're like trying to keep it such a secret, but then they're releasing the movie like 2 weeks early in the UK. So
yeah, what do you think's going to happen? Yeah. It's beyond. It's to the point where it's like making me mad. Like, it's a movie I did not care about, like, whatsoever. Like, oh yeah, I'll watch it when it comes out. It's fine, whatever. To now, it's like you got my expectations up for a certain, like, just level. Like, I just want to see something that's just bonkers and over the top and crazy. And now it's just like they keep trying to play coy, and it's like, you know what? Fuck you.
And I'm guessing you've probably also heard, and I know reshoots are a standard process for them, but apparently they're like undergoing massive reshoots on Doctor Strange too.
Yeah, that has
just gets me worried because like already I saw someone tweet, and it's like that was my immediate thought too of like, did Sam Raimi turn into a Sam Raimi movie? And they're like, no, like this is too Sam Raimi. Like that's my concern. So I'm worried about that one too. Where that was like, to me, was going to be the next big one. Like, oh, I can't wait to kind of dig into this one coming up. And it's like, oh, reshoots, great. Yeah.
But yeah, it is what it is. Well, I guess all we can do is sit tight and whatever. But
don't worry. Soon we have Black Adam with The Rock coming, so that's DC back on top.
That's going to be so good, and he'll be on Facebook nonstop telling you how it's the number one whatever this and the number one whatever that and greatest innovation of. But hey, you know what? When it comes to superhero movies, Trev, you'll never top the original Alien. Am I right?
Yeah, Alien. What was the other one he said that was like a superhero movie?
Yeah, I can't remember. It was like Alien.
Blade Runner. I think.
Blade Runner. Yeah. Wouldn't it be awesome if Ridley did a mic drop and like, I already made the best comic book film of all time. You ever guys see a little movie called Kingdom of Heaven? Boom.
I'm surprised they didn't sell Thelma and Louise as a superhero film. It builds to them flying at the end.
Oh yeah, they did fly. He's like, we cut away. Just you don't know they flew, but yeah. So I'm a little behind on failure to franchise too. Like, can you give a sneak peek of maybe what your December slate will look like, since this will come out early December?
Sure can. So for December, we decided to do. We like our theme months, and I came up with a theme where I said, since it's December, since it's Christmas time, how about we gift each other movies to do? And which means I said, let's each pick a film that we want to review for whatever reason that we don't think would necessarily come up in like our regular rotation when we're trying to figure out themes. Mm-hmm. And the whole idea was that I would pick a movie from our overall list, and Chris would pick a movie from our overall list, and neither person could veto it. So I got to choose a movie to do, and Chris got to choose a movie to do. And since this is coming out when it is, I can tell you what those two movies were because we announced them at the end of our last November episode. So Chris chose, in December we'll be watching, Chris's choice is Hansel and Gretel Witch Hunters.
Oh, yes.
Which I've never seen, and neither is Chris. That'll be a first-time watch for both of us.
You guys are in for a treat.
Okay. And then the one I chose, because this is a movie I've been wanting to revisit for years now and haven't got around to, and I knew I brought it up with Chris before, and he had not seen it, but he had put it on his list once I talked about it. I think you're going to be excited about this, Goat. I picked Tank Girl.
Oh, amazing. I haven't sat down and done all the way through rewatch, but yeah, like, I was a big fan of Tanker when it was released theatrically, and then I've seen it on cable again recently. Man, I love the makeup on the kangaroo, man. I love it.
Yeah. I just think it's it's another one of those movies that's just so weird and so fascinating. And I know, like, I don't know if you've heard, like, Margot Robbie bought the rights to it.
No.
She's trying to develop a new version. That's one of those things where you never know if it's going to go anywhere, right?
That would be a dream project.
Seems perfect for it, right? Like, so that I mean, seeing her play Harley, she definitely, there's not too much difference between Harley and Tank Girl, but that's a character that deserves to be on a big screen again.
You know what's weird about Margot Robbie and what infuriates me about, like, kind of like the whatever fandom narrative around her? I mean, don't get me wrong, like, you know, whatever, looks wise, she's a 100 out of 10, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But it's like, to me, it's like, what makes her so awesome as a performer, like, not that she did a bad job or anything, but, like, everybody's like, oh, Wolf of Wall Street, she's naked, and she's like, to me, that's, like, my least favorite Margot Robbie role, because that's, like, the least expressive, I mean, she did good in it, but it's like,
yeah, I
love the ones where she's, like, weird and crazy and, like, just doing whatever and not being glamorous, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, sorry that she was, you know, made in the mold of the slightly more perfect version of Jamie Presley physically, but as an actress, like, I love that she kind of, like, swings for the fences the way she does.
Yeah, like with, like, an I, Tonya, or...
Oh, I love I, Tonya, yeah. I mean, even Harley Quinn, I mean, I know it's cliche because Harley Quinn is, like, the whatever Halloween costume, but even her take on that, like, I find interesting. And the fact that people don't really pick up on it, but like, every time she appears as Harley Quinn, it's a slightly different, like, version of the character.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing, like, I have to admit, like, I'll eat crow on this, where when they first cast her, I was not super excited about it, and I think it's because, as you said, like, she already shown her talent, but as good as she was in Wolf of Wall Street, it definitely was, like, at that point, it's like, oh, she's just the new bombshell, right? She's the new bombshell in Hollywood. And they're getting a bombshell to play Harley Quinn. But then the level of enthusiasm and gusto she dove into that with, and you said, like, she did exactly what we always want the people who get cast these parts to do. You can tell she just got obsessed with the character, went all in on it. You can tell she's read, like, multiple Harley Quinn stories. She's trying to produce more Harley Quinn content. She's the one who's like, yeah, I eventually want to get to, like, Sirens of Gotham and bring in Poison Ivy, and she seems so excited to play that character. And like you said, she plays it slightly differently each time. It's just it's that there's, like, a few times in superhero history where just the right person was cast for that part.
Yeah.
Right? You think of, like, Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man, Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool, and I think now she fits into that with Harley.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear you guys cover Hansel and Gretel Witch Hunt, because I just love how fucking crazy that movie is. But it's like, that's going to be a great episode for your show, because one thing I got to give a shout out to Chris, who I don't know at all, like, not at all, never had one interaction with the guy. What I like about Chris in terms of listening to him as a podcaster is I love that he goes hard. Like, yeah. like sometimes I'll listen to the episode and I'll be like, yeah, Chris, you're my boy. Like, he'll defend, like, the most whatever trash movie, like, he gets it. And then there's other times, like, there'll be, like, a movie that's just, like, whatever, and he fucking hates the shit out of it. And that's interesting to listen to, too. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, so if I had to make a prediction, I think you'll have a little bit of fun with the Hansel and Gretel, and I think Chris will hate it. But I could be wrong, because it's one of those movies that could even, like, flip-flop like that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, who knows? I know the reason he picked it was because it's short. Yeah. That was his ultimate deciding factor. He looked at our overall list, and that one was only 88 minutes. And we figured with credits, that's probably a good quick watch.
Yeah, like, it's not a movie that feels like it's been butchered or not, but it definitely feels like a movie where, like, the studio was like, come on, guys, make it all kill or no filler. So, like, mm-hmm. you I don't want to say it's nonstop action, because it's not, but you'll get quite a few action scenes, and I'm just curious, because it's like, you know, I don't want to ruin too much, but it's just like your guys' episode about the Hellboy movie, the David Harbour one, for Mila Jovovich, like, that was one of the funnest episodes to listen to, and I'm wondering if Hansel and Gretel could turn out like that, or could turn out like something else. But yeah, so I'm looking for that. I'm like, why don't you tease some people? Why don't you make them listen to your other podcast, Trev? Now I'm dying to listen to the episode. So yeah. It's going to be fun. So, Dan Aykroyd, living legend, Dan Aykroyd. Mm-hmm. Maybe he'll be like the Shire Reeve, and he'll live old enough to be making Blues Brothers 3000. You never know.
Yeah, he just has a diet of only Crystal Skull vodka.
Yeah, he makes the Crystal Skull vodka. So he's clearly in touch with the aliens. I mean, we know this. So Please, Dan Aykroyd, if you're listening, and we're pretty sure you are.
Dan Aykroyd's in the wrong Indiana Jones movie. He's in Temple of Doom, but he should have been in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
That's right. He should have been the script writer. Like maybe that couldn't
have been any worse than what we got. So.
Yeah, which by the way, I watched that movie for the first time a few months ago, and I'm like, you need to either swing bigger or you need to like, you know what I mean? Like come up with something. Yeah, Crystal Skull.
Yeah, I'm one of those guys who I think the first half is actually really, really good.
Yeah,
I'm really into it for the first half, and it just it really loses the narrative in the second half. Too many dumb twists and not enough exposition at the end to really explain what the hell is happening. So.
Well, the good news is they're making another Indiana Jones movie, so the series will not end on Crystal Skull now. That's the good news. The bad news is entire seasons of season 2, 3, and 4 of Shudder's Cursed Films is going to be based on the new Indiana Jones movie.
Yeah, so as you were talking, I just actually got word. I think it's been delayed again till 2028 now. So.
Yeah, years and years, and it's like I think Mola Ram is working his curse because
Indiana Jones is going to look like the Shire Reeve by the time.
Yeah, he will. Anything that could go, like literally Indiana Jones. That should be the subtitle for the new Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones, whatever semicolon nothing but trouble. That's how you do it. All right, everybody. I want to thank you for listening, Trev. I want to thank you for another year of hard. I know you got calluses on those hands from digging up these old films. So, thank you for being a grave digger here in the movie.
Of course, yeah. I'll always be on call.
Absolutely, everybody. Again, we always appreciate you. We it's a pleasure to go down a trip of nostalgia, memory lane, however you want to put it. And we do it for free, Trev. We're not digging up this shit to make $1 like Ivan Reitman. We just do it for fun. So again, everybody, we'll see you again here soon in the movie graveyard.